A single father drowning in debt. A billionaire CEO desperate to save her empire. One fake marriage contract that will destroy them both. When Ethan Mercer agrees to pretend to be Vanessa Hart's husband for just one night, he thinks he's found the answer to his daughter's medical bills. But the moment he walks into her father's mansion, he realizes he's made a terrible mistake. This isn't a simple arrangement, it's a trap. And now the most powerful family in the city wants to bury him alive. This is their story. Hit like and comment your city so I can see how far this journey travels. The rain hammered against the corrugated metal roof of Mercer's custom metalworks like 1,000 angry fists. Ethan wiped his hands on an oil-stained rag and squinted at the clock mounted above his workbench. 10:15. He should have locked up an hour ago, but the Henderson Commission wasn't going to finish itself, and the Henderson Commission was the only thing standing between him and another late notice from the electric company. He set down the welding torch and stretched his back, feeling every one of his 34 years in the ache between his shoulder blades. The shop was small, barely large enough for 2 workstations, and the ancient equipment his father had left him, but it was his. Most days that felt like enough. Tonight, it just felt heavy. His phone buzzed on the workbench. He didn't need to look at it to know what it was. The hospital billing department closed at 5, but their automated reminders ran all night. Lily's last round of treatments had cost more than his truck was worth, and the insurance company had found a dozen creative ways to deny coverage. He'd been making payments when he could, which lately meant not often enough. Ethan grabbed the phone and silenced it without reading the message. He'd deal with it tomorrow, or the day after, or whenever he figured out how to make money appear out of thin air. The bell above the shop door chimed. He looked up, annoyed. The closed sign was clearly visible, and nobody came to this part of town at this hour unless they were lost or looking for trouble. But the woman standing in his doorway didn't look lost, and she definitely didn't look like trouble. She looked like money. Expensive coat, tailored perfectly. Heels that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Dark hair pulled back so tight it might have been painful. And an expression that suggested she'd never heard the word no in her entire life. "We're closed," Ethan said. The woman stepped inside anyway, closing the door behind her. Water dripped from her coat onto his concrete floor. She looked around the shop with the kind of clinical assessment usually reserved for crime scenes. "You're Ethan Mercer," she said. Not a question. "That's what the sign says." He gestured toward the window. "And like I said, we're closed. Come back tomorrow if you need something fabricated." "I don't need fabrication." She walked further into the shop, her heels clicking against the floor. "I need you." Ethan set down the rag. "Lady, I don't know what kind of place you think this is. My name is Vanessa Hart." She said it like he should recognize it. When he didn't react, something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe. Or annoyance. "Hart Industries. We own the Riverside Development. The new convention center. Half the commercial real estate downtown." "Congratulations," Ethan said flatly. "Still closed." Vanessa Hart pulled an envelope from inside her coat and set it on his workbench. It was thick, heavy, the kind of envelope that didn't contain junk mail. "There's $50,000 in there," she said. "Cash. It's yours if you do exactly what I tell you for the next 6 hours." Ethan stared at the envelope, then at her, then back at the envelope. "What's the catch?" "The catch is that you have to pretend to be my husband at a family dinner tonight. You'll need to be convincing. My father can smell a lie from across a room." She paused. "But you won't have to do anything inappropriate. Just stand beside me, answer questions if asked, and make it believable that I married someone like you." "Someone like me," Ethan repeated slowly. "Someone real. Someone he can't control or buy." Her voice was cold, businesslike. "My father is trying to force me out of my own company. He thinks I'm weak because I'm not married, because I don't have the right kind of stability. This dinner is his last move before he calls a board vote. If I show up alone, I lose. If I show up with you, I win." Ethan picked up the envelope. It was definitely heavy. $50,000. That would cover Lily's medical bills and then some. Maybe even let him replace the ancient compressor that kept dying at the worst possible times. "Why me?" he asked. "Why not hire an actor or something?" "Because actors look like actors. You look like exactly what I need. Someone authentic. Someone who doesn't belong in my world." She met his eyes, and for just a second he saw something beneath the ice. Desperation, maybe. I'm not asking you to like me, Mr. Mercer. I'm asking you to take the money and do a job. 6 hours, that's all. He should have said no. Every instinct he had was screaming at him to hand back the envelope and send this woman out into the rain. But then he thought about Lily, about the way she'd tried to hide how tired she was after the last treatment, about the stack of medical bills sitting on his kitchen counter. 6 hours, he said. 6 hours. And nothing weird. No, nothing weird, Vanessa confirmed. You show up, you play the part, you leave. That's the arrangement. Ethan looked down at his oil-stained work clothes. I'm going to need to change. There's a suit in my car. I had my assistant guess your measurements. She checked her watch. It was slim and silver and probably cost more than his truck. We need to leave in 20 minutes. The dinner starts at 11. 11? Who the hell eats dinner at 11 at night? People who want to make sure their enemies are too tired to think straight. Vanessa walked back toward the door. 20 minutes, Mr. Mercer. I'll be waiting outside. She left before he could change his mind. Ethan stood alone in his shop, holding an envelope full of cash and wondering what he'd just agreed to. Through the window, he could see Vanessa sitting in the back of a black town car, her phone already pressed to her ear. The driver stood outside under an umbrella, rain streaming off the sides. He pulled out his phone and called Mrs. Chen next door. She picked up on the second ring. Ethan, it's late. Is everything okay? Yeah, sorry. Listen, I need a favor. Can you check on Lily? I have to go out for a few hours. Tonight, in this weather? It's work. Emergency job. Good money. He glanced at the envelope. Really good money. Mrs. Chen sighed, but he could hear the smile in it. That girl's sleeping like an angel. I'll stay until you get back, but you owe me soup. I'll make you a whole pot. Thanks, Mrs. Chen. He hung up and looked around his shop one more time. The Henderson commission sat unfinished on the workbench. The floor needed sweeping. The windows needed replacing. Everything needed something. $50,000. He grabbed his coat and headed outside. The suit fit perfectly, which bothered him more than it should have. Vanessa's assistant must have been very good at guessing, or very good at research. Either way, it felt wrong to be wearing clothes that probably cost more than he made in 3 months. The town car glided through empty streets, rain blurring the city lights into abstract streaks of color. Vanessa sat across from him, typing something on her phone with the kind of focused intensity that suggested the message was either very important or very angry. Your daughter, she said suddenly, not looking up. Lily. She's 7, correct? Ethan went very still. How do you know that? I know everything about you, Mr. Mercer. I don't make business arrangements with strangers. Now she did look up. Leukemia. In remission, but the treatments were expensive. Your insurance denied most of the claims. You're 3 months behind on your mortgage. Your truck has 140,000 miles on it. You eat lunch at the same diner 4 days a week because they give you free coffee. She tilted her head slightly. Should I continue? You had me investigated. I had you researched. There's a difference. She went back to her phone. I needed to make sure you were desperate enough to say yes, but honest enough not to try to extort me later. You passed both tests. Ethan clenched his jaw. You could have just asked. People lie when you ask. Financial records don't. Must be nice, Ethan said quietly, living in a world where you can just buy whatever information you want about people. Vanessa's fingers stopped moving on her phone. For a long moment, she was completely still. Then she set the phone down on the seat beside her. You're angry, she said. I'm not angry. I'm creeped out. There's a difference. I apologize if my methods made you uncomfortable, but I needed to be certain. She folded her hands in her lap. My father doesn't fight fair, Mr. Mercer. If I'm going to beat him, I can't afford to fight fair either. The car turned onto a private road that wound up into the hills. Ethan watched the houses get bigger and further apart, until they weren't really houses anymore. They were estates, mansions, the kind of places that had names instead of addresses. Tell me about your father, Ethan said. Vanessa looked out the window. Richard Hart built Hart Industries from nothing. He's brilliant, ruthless, and completely incapable of admitting that anyone else might know better than him, especially not his daughter. Her reflection in the window was perfectly still. He gave me the CEO position 3 years ago, not because he thought I deserved it, but because he thought it would be amusing to watch me fail. When I didn't fail, he started looking for other ways to remove me. And marriage is his leverage. Marriage is his obsession. He thinks a woman can't run a company without a man to keep her grounded. The board doesn't care either way, but they care about stability. If Richard can convince them that I'm unstable, unserious, too independent, she stopped. This dinner is his opening move. He's invited the entire family and half the board. He's going to make a speech about legacy and responsibility and the importance of tradition. And then he's going to suggest, very politely, that maybe I'm not ready for the responsibility I've been given. Unless you show up married. Unless I show up married, Vanessa confirmed, to someone he can't control, someone who doesn't need his money or his approval, someone real. The car pulled through a gate that looked like it belonged to a national park. At the end of a long driveway, a house rose out of the darkness like something from a movie, all glass and stone and architectural statements. Light poured from every window. Ethan felt his stomach drop. Jesus. Close, Vanessa said dryly, but my father would prefer you call him Richard. The car stopped. The driver opened the door. Vanessa stepped out first, her heels clicking against the cobblestone driveway. Ethan followed, trying not to look as out of place as he felt. Remember, Vanessa said quietly, you're my husband. We met 6 months ago. You were doing metal work for one of my properties. We kept it quiet because we wanted privacy. You proposed 3 months ago. We got married 2 weeks ago at a courthouse. Simple, private, honest. What if someone asks me something I don't know the answer to? Then tell them you don't talk about your personal life. People will respect that. They'll think you're deep. She straightened his tie. Her fingers were cold. Just don't volunteer information, and don't let my father intimidate you. I'm a welder from the industrial district. Your father runs half the city. I'm pretty sure intimidation is inevitable. Vanessa almost smiled. Then be intimidated quietly. Come on. They walked towards the house together. Through the windows, Ethan could see people moving inside. Lots of people. Men in suits that made his look cheap. Women in dresses that probably required engineering degrees to put on. Waiters carrying trays of champagne. This was insane. He was going to get caught in the first 5 minutes. Someone would ask him a question he couldn't answer, or he'd use the wrong fork, or he'd call someone by the wrong title, and the whole thing would fall apart. But then he thought about Lily, about the hospital bills, about $50,000. He could do this. 6 hours. He'd survived worse. The door opened before they reached it. A man in a tuxedo that was somehow even more formal than a tuxedo usually was stood in the entrance, his face carefully neutral. Miss Hart, he said, your father is waiting in the main salon. Thank you, Bernard. Vanessa didn't break stride. She walked into the house like she owned it, which Ethan supposed she probably would someday. He followed her through a hallway that was bigger than his entire shop. Paintings lined the walls, real paintings, the kind that museums kept behind glass. The floor was marble, actual marble. He tried not to stare. The main salon turned out to be a room roughly the size of a basketball court, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the valley below. Maybe 30 people stood in clusters, talking in the low, polite tones of people who were used to being important. A string quartet played something classical in the corner, and in the center of it all, holding court like a king, stood a man who could only be Richard Hart. He was tall, silver-haired, with the kind of face that looked carved rather than grown. Expensive suit, perfect posture, and eyes that tracked Vanessa's entrance like a hawk spotting prey. Vanessa, he said, his voice carrying across the room. How wonderful of you to join us. We were starting to worry you'd forgotten. Every conversation in the room stopped. 30 faces turned toward them. Vanessa squeezed Ethan's hand once, hard. Then she smiled, and Ethan realized he'd never actually seen her smile before. It was perfect, polished, and completely terrifying. I wouldn't miss it for the world, Father. She pulled Ethan forward. I'd like you to meet my husband, Ethan Mercer. The silence in the room became absolute. Richard Hart's eyes moved to Ethan, up and down, taking in every detail. The suit that fit but didn't quite sit right. The calloused hands. The face that had seen too much sun and not enough country clubs. Your husband, Richard said slowly. How unexpected. Ethan forced himself to meet the older man's gaze. Mr. Hart, thank you for having me. Oh, the pleasure is entirely mine. Richard smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm always delighted to meet the people who find their way into my daughter's life, especially when they arrive so suddenly. Tell me, Mr. Mercer, what is it that you do? I'm a metal worker. I run a custom fabrication shop. Fascinating. And how exactly did you and my daughter meet? Vanessa stepped in smoothly. Ethan was doing work on the Riverside property. We got to talking. One thing led to another. One thing led to another, Richard repeated. He took a sip of his drink. And you decided to get married. After how long, exactly? 6 months, Ethan said. 6 months. My. Richard's smile widened. Young love. How refreshing. Though I must admit, Vanessa, I'm a little hurt you didn't think to mention any of this to your family. One would think a wedding might warrant at least a phone call. We wanted privacy, Vanessa said. Her voice was steady, but Ethan could feel the tension in her hand. Everything in my life is public. This was something I wanted to keep for myself. Privacy, yes, of course. Richard gestured to the room. Well, I'm afraid your privacy has ended, dear. Everyone, please join me in congratulating my daughter on her surprise marriage to Vanessa and her metal worker. The room erupted in polite applause. A few people came forward to offer congratulations, their smiles tight and curious. Ethan shook hands, nodded, tried to remember names he forgot immediately. An older woman with diamonds at her throat air-kissed Vanessa's cheeks. Darling, what a surprise! I had no idea you were even seeing anyone. It happened quickly, Vanessa said. Clearly. The woman's eyes slid to Ethan. And what did you say you do, Mr. Mercer? I didn't, but I'm a welder. Custom metalwork. How earthy. She smiled. And where did you two lovebirds tie the knot? Courthouse, Ethan said. 2 weeks ago. The woman's eyebrows rose. A courthouse, how wonderfully modern. More people came, more questions, more tight smiles and veiled curiosity. Ethan answered what he could, deflected what he couldn't, and tried not to look as uncomfortable as he felt. Across the room, Richard Hart watched everything with the patient focus of a chess player waiting for an opponent to make a mistake. Dinner was announced at midnight. They sat at a table that could have comfortably seated 40. Richard at the head, Vanessa to his right, Ethan beside her. The rest of the family and select board members filled in the remaining seats, a carefully orchestrated arrangement that put Ethan directly in Richard's line of sight. The first course arrived. Ethan couldn't identify it, something with foam and microgreens and a description from the server that included the word deconstructed. He picked up the wrong fork. Vanessa's hand, hidden beneath the table, touched his knee. A warning. He set down the fork and picked up the right one. So, Mr. Mercer, Richard said from the head of the table, tell me about your business, custom metalwork. That must be quite challenging in today's economy. It has its moments, Ethan said carefully. I imagine so. Competition must be fierce. So many shops closing down. Supply chain issues. Rising costs. Richard cut into his food with surgical precision. How do you manage to stay afloat? I do good work. People notice. Good work. Richard nodded slowly. Yes, I suppose that's important. Though in my experience, Mr. Mercer, good work is rarely enough on its own. One needs connections, resources, a certain level of sophistication. He paused. But perhaps you've already considered that. Perhaps that's part of the appeal of marrying my daughter. The table went quiet. Vanessa's hand on Ethan's knee became a grip. Father, I'm simply curious, Richard continued smoothly. It's a natural question, don't you think? A man from a struggling business suddenly marries one of the wealthiest women in the city. One wonders about the timing. Ethan set down his fork, slowly, carefully. He looked directly at Richard Hart. You think I married your daughter for her money, he said. I think people are motivated by their circumstances, Mr. Mercer. And your circumstances, from what I understand, are quite challenging. They are. Ethan didn't look away. My daughter was sick. The medical bills nearly bankrupted me. I'm behind on almost everything. My business is one bad month away from closing. You're absolutely right about all of that. Someone at the table inhaled sharply. But I didn't marry Vanessa because of any of that, Ethan continued. I married her because she's the first person I've met in years who doesn't treat me like I'm broken. She doesn't pity me. She doesn't try to fix me. She just... He stopped, glanced at Vanessa. She just sees me, and that's worth more than all the money in this room. The silence stretched. Then Vanessa squeezed his hand under the table. Not a warning this time, something else. Richard Hart stared at him, really stared at him. And for just a second, Ethan saw something flicker across the older man's face. Not anger, not contempt, something sharper, something almost like respect. How touching, Richard said finally. He raised his glass. To honesty, then, and to my daughter's excellent taste in husbands. The table drank, the tension broke. Conversation resumed, but Ethan saw the way Richard Hart looked at him for the rest of the dinner. Like a puzzle that didn't quite fit, like a problem that needed solving. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that this was just the beginning. The dinner lasted 3 more hours. 3 hours of courses Ethan couldn't identify, conversations he couldn't follow, and questions that felt less like small talk and more like interrogations. By the time Richard Hart stood to give his toast, Ethan's head was pounding and his jaw ached from forcing smiles. Family, Richard began, his voice cutting through the low murmur of conversation. Everyone turned to face him. We gather here tonight not just to celebrate, but to remember why we gather at all. Legacy, continuity, the understanding that what we build today must outlive us tomorrow. He paused, letting the words settle. My daughter Vanessa has done remarkable work with Hart Industries. She's grown our portfolio, strengthened our position, proven herself in ways that have, frankly, surprised me. A few people chuckled politely. But leadership is not simply about quarterly earnings or market share. It's about stability. It's about the judgment to know when to seek counsel, when to admit limitation, when to recognize that even the strongest among us need support. Ethan felt Vanessa go rigid beside him. Tonight, Richard continued, I learned that Vanessa has married. This news comes as a surprise to many of us, but perhaps it shouldn't. Perhaps it's exactly the kind of maturity and grounding that leadership requires. Perhaps it demonstrates that Vanessa understands what I've been trying to teach her all along, that no one, not even someone as capable as my daughter, should carry the weight of empire alone. He raised his glass. To Vanessa and Ethan, may their marriage prove as enduring as the company they now both, in their own ways, represent. The table drank. Vanessa smiled, but Ethan could see the fury behind her eyes, because Richard Hart hadn't congratulated them. He'd claimed them. He'd turned their marriage into evidence of his own wisdom, proof that his daughter needed exactly the kind of traditional structure he'd been pushing all along. It was brilliant, and it was vicious. The dinner finally ended at 3 in the morning. People filtered out slowly, stopping to congratulate Vanessa, to shake Ethan's hand, to whisper things that sounded supportive but felt like warnings. In the car on the way back, Vanessa said nothing. She stared out the window, her jaw tight, her hands folded perfectly in her lap. He's going to dig, Ethan said quietly. I know. He's going to find out about the money, about the arrangement. I know. What happens then? Vanessa turned to look at him. In the darkness of the car, with the city lights sliding across her face, she looked younger, tired, almost human. Then he wins, she said, and I lose everything I've built. So what do we do? We? She almost smiled. Your 6 hours are almost up, Mr. Mercer. You don't have to do anything. You take your money and go home to your daughter. Ethan thought about the envelope in his coat pocket, about the medical bills it would erase, about the breathing room it would give him. He should have said yes. He should have taken the out she was offering, but he kept seeing the look on her face when her father had made that toast. The way she'd sat perfectly still, perfectly poised, while everything she'd built was being reframed as a lesson in her own inadequacy. How much trouble are you actually in? He asked. Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. My father controls 40% of the board directly. Another 20% will vote however he tells them to. I have 35% support, maybe 40 on a good day. The remaining votes are undecided. She looked back out the window. If he pushes for a vote of no confidence in the next quarter, I'll lose. And once I lose the CEO position, I lose my standing, my credibility, everything. But tonight helped. Tonight bought me time, maybe a month, maybe 2. She closed her eyes. But he's going to investigate you, Ethan. He's going to find out I paid you, and when he does, he's going to use it to destroy both of us. The car pulled up outside his shop. Rain still fell, lighter now, but relentless. Through the window, Ethan could see his truck sitting in the parking lot, old and ugly and real. He should get out. He should take the money and forget this ever happened. What if we made it real, he said. Vanessa opened her eyes. What? Your father's going to investigate. Fine. Let him investigate. Let him find out I was desperate and you offered me money. But what if we didn't end it there? What if we actually tried to make this work? You're not serious. I'm completely serious. You need stability and credibility. He stopped. I need to keep my daughter safe, and your father already thinks we're married, so why not just stay married? At least until you get through the board vote. Ethan, you don't understand what you're suggesting. My father won't just investigate. He'll attack. He'll come after your business, your custody, everything you care about. This isn't a game. I know it's not a game. Ethan looked at her directly. But I'm already in it. The second I walked into that house tonight, I was in it. And I'm not sure either of us gets out clean by pretending it never happened. Vanessa stared at him. You'd do this? Stay in a fake marriage with someone you just met? Risk everything for money you've already earned? Not for money, Ethan said quietly. For time. You need time to secure your company. I need time to figure out how to keep my business running. Maybe we can buy each other that time. The driver cleared his throat softly. Miss Hart, your father's investigator just entered the area. If you're going to continue this conversation, I'd suggest moving it inside. Vanessa looked at Ethan for another long moment. Then she nodded once, sharp and decisive. Drive us to Mr. Mercer's residence, she told the driver. Then to Ethan. If we're doing this, we need rules, boundaries, a real contract. Okay, Ethan said, and you need to understand something. My father doesn't lose, ever. If we're going to beat him, we have to be smarter, faster, and more committed than he thinks we're capable of being. I understand. No, Vanessa said softly. You really don't, but you will. The car pulled away from the shop, heading toward the small house Ethan rented 3 blocks from where he'd grown up. As they drove through empty streets, Ethan looked down at the envelope in his pocket. $50,000 for 6 hours. What would she pay for 6 months? And more importantly, what would it cost him when it was over? Mrs. Chen was asleep on his couch when they arrived, a blanket tucked around her shoulders, and a Korean drama paused on the television. Ethan shook her gently awake. I'm back, he whispered. Thank you for staying. Mrs. Chen blinked at him, then at Vanessa standing in the doorway, still in her expensive coat. Her eyebrows rose. Emergency job, you said. It was complicated. Mrs. Chen gathered her things slowly, taking her time, clearly waiting for an introduction that Ethan wasn't ready to give. Finally, she smiled at Vanessa. You take care of him, he doesn't take care of himself. I'll do my best, Vanessa said, her voice softer than Ethan had heard it all night. When Mrs. Chen was gone, Ethan locked the door and turned to find Vanessa examining his living room with the same clinical assessment she'd given his shop. Small space, old furniture. Lily's drawings taped to the refrigerator, a life built on making do. Coffee? He asked. Please. He made it in the ancient coffee maker that had belonged to his mother, the one that took twice as long as it should, but made coffee that actually tasted like coffee. Vanessa sat at his kitchen table, her coat folded precisely over the back of the chair, and pulled out her phone. I'm sending you a contract, she said. Read it carefully. If you have questions, ask them now. Ethan's phone buzzed. He opened the document and started reading. It was thorough, brutally thorough. Terms of the arrangement, duration, expectations, termination clauses, and a confidentiality agreement that made it clear what would happen if he ever told anyone the marriage had started as a business transaction. 18 months, he said, reading one section twice to make sure he understood. You want to stay married for 18 months? That's how long it will take to secure the board, restructure voting rights, and build enough institutional support that my father can't touch me. She accepted the coffee he handed her. After that, we can divorce quietly. You'll be compensated. How much? $200,000, in addition to the $50,000 you've already earned. Ethan sat down hard. That's what I'm paying for certainty, for your silence, for whatever mess my father creates when he inevitably discovers the truth. She took a sip of coffee. You'll also receive health insurance through the company. Full coverage for you and Lily. He stared at her. Why would you do that? Because if your daughter gets sick again and you can't pay for treatment, you'll become desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. I can't afford your mistakes. It should have sounded cold, calculated, and it did. But underneath it, Ethan heard something else, something that sounded almost like empathy. What are the rules? He asked. We maintain separate residences for now, but you'll need to spend time at my apartment to make the arrangement believable. Public appearances together at least twice a week. Sunday dinners with my family when required. You'll attend company events as my spouse. In public, we act like a real couple. In private, she paused. In private, we're business partners. Nothing more. Okay, I'll need access to your finances, not control, but visibility. If my father's investigator finds something problematic, I need to know about it before he does. Fine. And Lily? Vanessa set down her coffee. She can't know the truth. Children talk. If she tells a friend, if she mentions something at school, the whole arrangement falls apart. As far as she's concerned, we met, fell in love, and got married. Can you sell that to a 7-year-old? Ethan thought about Lily, about her wide eyes and endless questions and complete inability to keep a secret. I can try, he said. Trying isn't good enough. Then, yes, I can sell it. Vanessa studied him. This is going to get ugly, Ethan. My father is going to dig into every corner of your life. He's going to look for leverage, for weakness, for anything he can use, and when he doesn't find it, he's going to create it. Are you prepared for that? No, Ethan said honestly, but I'm doing it anyway. For the first time since he'd met her, Vanessa smiled. Not the polished, perfect smile from the party, something smaller, more real. Then welcome to the war, Mr. Mercer. She left 20 minutes later, after they'd both signed the contract and she'd explained the next steps. The driver was waiting outside, patient and invisible. Ethan watched the town car disappear down his street, and then he stood in his doorway for a long time, trying to process what he'd just agreed to. 18 months, $250,000. And a lie that would have to become the most convincing truth either of them had ever told. He checked on Lily before he went to bed. She was asleep in her room, surrounded by stuffed animals and library books, her breathing steady and strong. The treatments had worked. She was healthy. And now, because of Vanessa Hart, she'd stay that way. Ethan brushed hair off his daughter's forehead and made a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. I'm going to protect you, he whispered, no matter what it costs. In the morning, Richard Hart's investigator would start digging. The board would start asking questions. And Ethan Mercer, welder and single father, would officially become the most unlikely piece on a chessboard he didn't fully understand. But tonight, for just a few more hours, he let himself believe that everything might actually work out. The investigator showed up on Tuesday. Ethan was in the middle of cutting steel when he noticed the sedan parked across the street. Dark blue, expensive, with tinted windows and the kind of patient stillness that suggested whoever was inside wasn't going anywhere anytime soon. He set down the plasma cutter and wiped his hands, watching. The car didn't move. By lunch, it was still there. Ethan ate a sandwich at the workbench and tried to ignore it, but the weight of being watched made the food taste like cardboard. He pulled out his phone and texted Vanessa. Someone's watching my shop. Her response came back immediately. I know. Don't engage. Act normal. Easy for her to say. She probably had people watching her all the time. For Ethan, having a stranger park outside his business felt like a threat he couldn't quite name. The sedan stayed until closing. When Ethan locked up and headed to his truck, he made sure to walk slowly, casually, like he hadn't noticed anything unusual. The windows stayed dark. He drove home, checked his mirrors obsessively, and tried to convince himself this was just part of the deal he'd signed. Lily was waiting for him on the front steps, backpack beside her, working on homework in the last light of the afternoon. She looked up when his truck pulled into the driveway. You're late, she said. Sorry, sweetheart. Work ran long. She gathered her papers and shoved them into her backpack with the careless efficiency of someone who'd been packing up homework for years. Mrs. Chen said you had an emergency job last night. Yeah, it went well. She also said you brought home a fancy lady. Ethan froze halfway up the steps. Did she? Is she your girlfriend? He sat down beside Lily, trying to figure out how to explain something he barely understood himself. The contract in his pocket felt heavy. Vanessa's rules echoed in his head. As far as Lily was concerned, they'd met, fallen in love, and gotten married. He'd never lied to his daughter before, not about anything that mattered. Her name is Vanessa, he said carefully, and she's not my girlfriend. Okay? She's my wife. Lily's pencil stopped moving. She looked at him, her face unreadable in that way kids had when they were processing something too big to react to immediately. You got married, she said slowly. Yeah. When? 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. She repeated it like she was testing the words. And you didn't tell me. I wanted to. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. It happened fast, Lily. We met a few months ago and everything just kind of fell into place, and I didn't know how to explain it because I didn't totally understand it myself. Lily set down her pencil very precisely. Do I have to call her Mom? No, you can call her Vanessa, or whatever you're comfortable with. Is she going to live here? Not right away. She has her own place. But you'll meet her soon, I promise. Lily picked up her pencil again and went back to her homework. For a long moment, she didn't say anything, and Ethan felt the weight of his daughter's silence like a stone in his chest. Okay, Lily said finally. Okay? Yeah. Okay. She erased something, rewrote it. Mrs. Chen said she looked nice. Was she nice? She is, Ethan said. She's just different from people around here. But yeah, she's nice. Does she like kids? I think so. We haven't really... He stopped. Started over. She knows about you. She knows you're the most important person in my life. And she's okay with that. Lily looked at him then, really looked at him, with the kind of clear-eyed assessment that made her seem much older than 7. Are you happy? She asked. The question hit him harder than it should have, because he wasn't happy, not exactly. He was terrified and out of his depth and caught in something he didn't fully understand. But when he thought about the medical bills disappearing, about Lily getting the care she needed without him having to choose between her health and keeping the lights on, he felt something close to relief. Yeah, he said. I'm happy. Lily nodded, satisfied, and went back to her math problems. And Ethan sat beside her on the steps, watching the street for dark sedans and wondering how long he could keep selling a lie to the one person who deserved nothing but truth. The first public appearance happened on Thursday. Vanessa picked him up at 7, this time in a car she was driving herself. Something sleek and foreign that probably cost more than his mortgage. She was dressed down, jeans, a sweater, almost normal, but she still looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Where are we going? Ethan asked, sliding into the passenger seat. Dinner. There's a restaurant downtown that my father's board members frequent. We need to be seen together looking comfortable. She pulled into traffic. How did Lily take the news? Better than I expected. Worse than I hoped. Did she believe you? I don't know. Maybe. She's 7, not stupid. Vanessa's hands tightened on the wheel. If she suspects, she doesn't suspect. She just thinks her dad got married without telling her, which is already pretty screwed up. Ethan looked out the window. She wants to meet you. When? I don't know. Soon. She asked if you liked kids. What did you tell her? That you do. Do I? Ethan turned to look at her. I have no idea. Do you? Vanessa was quiet for a moment. I've never spent time around children. I don't know if I like them or not. I suppose I'll find out. The restaurant was the kind of place that didn't have prices on the menu. Low lighting, hushed conversations, waiters who moved like ghosts. Ethan felt immediately out of place despite the suit Vanessa had sent over that morning. They were seated near the window, deliberately visible. Within 10 minutes, Ethan spotted 3 people staring at them with poorly concealed curiosity. They're talking about us, he said quietly. Good. That's the point. Vanessa opened her menu. Order whatever you want. We're staying at least 90 minutes. 90 minutes? Long enough to look like we're on a date, not a business meeting. The waiter appeared. Vanessa ordered wine without looking at the list. Ethan asked for water and tried not to feel like an idiot. Tell me about your daughter, Vanessa said when they were alone again. Why? Because if someone asked me about her, I should know more than her name and age. She folded her hands on the table. What's she like? Ethan wasn't sure how to answer that. Lily was. Lily. She was the reason he got up in the morning, the reason he kept working when his body wanted to quit, the reason he'd agreed to this insane arrangement in the first place. She's smart, he said finally. Too smart sometimes. She notices everything, remembers everything. Her teachers say she's reading 3 grades ahead. Does she take after you? I don't know, maybe. She's got her mother's eyes. Vanessa's expression shifted slightly. You don't talk about her mother. No. Why not? Because there's nothing to say. She left when Lily was 2, decided being a parent wasn't what she wanted. I haven't heard from her since. I'm sorry. Don't be. We're better off. Ethan took a drink of water. Lily doesn't remember her. Sometimes I think that's better. Sometimes I think it's worse. The wine arrived. Vanessa poured them each a glass, even though Ethan hadn't asked for one. Across the room, a man in an expensive suit was definitely staring at them now. Who's that? Ethan asked. Vanessa glanced over without moving her head. James Whitmore, board member, reports directly to my father. She smiled slightly. He's probably calling Richard right now. So this is working. This is the easy part. The hard part comes when my father decides to push back. She took a sip of wine. Which will be soon. He doesn't like being outmaneuvered. What's he going to do? I don't know yet, but it won't be subtle. They ordered food Ethan couldn't pronounce and made conversation that felt increasingly less like acting. Vanessa told him about the Riverside development, about the fight to get zoning approval, about the city council member who'd tried to block the project until Vanessa had dug up his connection to a competitor. Ethan told her about the Henderson Commission, about the custom railing he was designing, about the satisfaction of taking raw metal and turning it into something that would outlast him. It was strange, sitting across from someone who lived in a completely different world, finding common ground in the details of work. You like what you do, Vanessa said. Not a question. Yeah, I mean, it's hard. The money's never enough, but yeah, I like it. Why? Because when I'm done, there's something real, something I built with my own hands. You can't fake that. You can't buy it. It's just... He stopped, trying to find the right words. It's mine. Vanessa looked at him with something that might have been understanding. I know that feeling. By the time they left, it was after 10. James Whitmore was gone, but at least 4 other people had watched them throughout dinner. Vanessa drove him back to his truck, parked in the lot behind his shop. That went well, she said. Yeah. Same time next week? Different restaurant? I'll send you the details. She paused. And Ethan? About meeting Lily. I think we should wait a few more weeks. Give her time to adjust to the idea before we complicate it with reality. She's going to ask. Then tell her I'm traveling. Tell her I'm busy. Tell her whatever you need to tell her. Vanessa's voice was firm. But we do this my way, on my timeline. That's the deal. Ethan wanted to argue. Wanted to tell her that Lily deserved better than excuses and delays, but he'd signed a contract, and the contract said Vanessa was in charge. Fine, he said. Your timeline. He got out of the car and watched her drive away, and he stood in the empty parking lot wondering how many more nights like this he'd have to survive before 18 months was finally over. The first direct attack came on Saturday. Ethan was at the hardware store with Lily, loading lumber into his truck, when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Mr. Mercer? The voice was smooth, professional, vaguely threatening. My name is Thomas Crawford. I'm calling on behalf of Richard Hart. Ethan froze. Lily was 10 feet away examining paint samples with the focused intensity of someone planning a serious art project. He turned away from her, lowering his voice. What do you want? Mr. Hart would like to meet with you, privately, to discuss your relationship with his daughter. I've got nothing to discuss. Mr. Hart believes otherwise. He's prepared to make it worth your time, shall we say $100,000 for 1 hour of conversation? Ethan felt his stomach drop. You're trying to bribe me. I'm offering compensation for your time and honesty. There's a difference. Crawford's voice didn't change. Mr. Hart simply wants to understand the nature of your arrangement with Vanessa. He's concerned that you may not fully appreciate the complexity of the situation you've entered. Tell Mr. Hart I'm not interested. Mr. Mercer, I don't think you understand. No, I understand perfectly. You want me to take money to talk about my wife behind her back? The answer's no. He hung up before Crawford could respond. His hands were shaking. Lily appeared at his elbow. Who was that? Nobody, just work stuff. You look mad. I'm fine, sweetheart. Come on, let's get this lumber loaded. The phone rang again, same unknown number. Ethan silenced it and shoved the phone in his pocket. It rang 4 more times before they made it home. He texted Vanessa as soon as Lily was inside. Your father's guy just offered me money to talk. Her response was immediate. How much? 100,000. And you said? No. Good. He'll call back with a higher offer. Say no again. The phone rang that night at 11. Ethan was in bed, staring at the ceiling, when Crawford's number appeared on the screen. 200,000, Crawford said without preamble. One conversation, complete confidentiality. Not interested. Mr. Mercer, please be reasonable. Mr. Hart is simply trying to protect his daughter. Surely you can understand a father's concern. Yeah, I can, which is why I'm not selling her out for any amount of money. 300,000. Ethan sat up in bed. $300,000. More than he'd make in 5 years. Enough to pay off the house, replace every piece of equipment in the shop, set up a college fund for Lily that would actually mean something. All he had to do was sit down with Richard Hart and tell the truth. No, he said. Mr. Mercer, I said no. Stop calling me. He blocked the number and lay back down, his heart pounding. The ceiling fan turned slowly overhead. Somewhere in the house, Lily coughed in her sleep. $300,000. He'd said no. He pulled out his phone and texted Vanessa again. He went to 300. I said no. This time her response took longer. 3 minutes. 5. When it finally came, it was just 2 words. Thank you. Ethan stared at the message until his eyes burned, and then he turned off his phone and tried to sleep. Sunday dinner at the Hart estate was exactly as awful as Ethan had imagined it would be. Richard sat at the head of the table, presiding over roast duck and potatoes that had probably been imported from somewhere ridiculous. Vanessa's mother was there this time, a thin woman with carefully maintained hair and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. 2 of Vanessa's cousins had also been invited, along with their husbands, creating the kind of family gathering that felt more like a corporate board meeting. Ethan, Richard said warmly, like they were old friends. How wonderful to see you again. I trust the metalworking business is treating you well? Well enough, Ethan said. Excellent, excellent. You know, I've been meaning to ask, have you given any thought to expansion? I imagine a talented craftsman like yourself could benefit from additional resources. Better equipment, a larger facility. Vanessa's hand found Ethan's knee under the table. A warning. I'm happy where I am, Ethan said carefully. Are you? How admirable. So many people these days are focused on growth at any cost. It's refreshing to meet someone content with simplicity. Richard cut into his duck with surgical precision. Of course, simplicity has its limitations, particularly when supporting a family. My family's doing fine. Your daughter, Lily, is it? Charming name. I understand she's been through quite an ordeal with her health. Every muscle in Ethan's body went tight. She's healthy now. Yes, thank goodness for modern medicine, though I imagine the bills were substantial. Medical care in this country is unconscionably expensive, especially for those without adequate insurance. Richard smiled. But I suppose that's all behind you now, with Vanessa's resources at your disposal. Father, Vanessa said quietly, that's enough. I'm simply making conversation, dear. Surely Ethan doesn't mind discussing his daughter's recovery. It's a happy story, after all. The table had gone silent. Everyone was watching now, waiting to see how Ethan would respond to the very clear implication that he'd married Vanessa for access to her money. Ethan set down his fork, slowly, carefully. My daughter almost died, he said. His voice was steady, but barely. I watched her lose her hair. I watched her throw up until there was nothing left. I held her hand while they stuck needles in her arms and pumped poison into her body because that was the only way to keep her alive. So yeah, the bills were substantial. And yeah, I would have done anything, sold anything, sacrificed anything to make sure she survived. He looked directly at Richard. But I didn't marry your daughter for money. I married her because she's the first person I've met who doesn't look at me like I'm broken. And if you've got a problem with that, we can discuss it outside. The silence that followed was absolute. Richard Hart stared at him. Vanessa's mother looked like she might faint. One of the cousins coughed into his napkin. Then Richard smiled. Not the polished professional smile from before. Something sharper, more real. "Well," he said, "you certainly don't lack for conviction, do you?" "No, sir, I don't." "Good. Conviction is important, though I'd caution you that conviction without strategy is simply stubbornness." Richard raised his wine glass. "To family, then, and to the difficult conversations that keep us honest." The table drank. The tension broke slightly. Conversation resumed, quieter now, more careful. But Ethan saw the way Richard watched him for the rest of the meal, like a general studying an opponent who'd just revealed an unexpected defense. In the car afterward, Vanessa said nothing for the first 10 minutes. She just drove, her jaw tight, her hands gripping the wheel. "I'm sorry," Ethan said finally. "I shouldn't have—" "Don't apologize." Her voice was clipped. "You did exactly what you needed to do. My father was testing you. You passed." "Didn't feel like passing." "That's because passing, in my father's world, means making yourself a bigger target." She glanced at him. "He's going to come after you harder now. He knows you won't be bought, so he'll try to break you instead." "How?" "I don't know yet, but it won't be subtle and it won't be legal." She pulled over suddenly, parking on a residential street lined with trees. "Ethan, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest." "Okay. Is there anything in your past that could be used against you? Anything criminal? Anything questionable? Anything that could be twisted into leverage?" "No, I mean, I got a speeding ticket 3 years ago, but I'm serious. My father is going to dig until he finds something. If there's anything, I need to know now so we can get ahead of it." Ethan thought about his life. The boring, grinding, ordinary reality of it. Work, bills, parenting, survival. Nothing dramatic. Nothing scandalous. "There's nothing," he said. "I'm sorry I'm not more interesting." Vanessa almost smiled. "Don't be. Boring is good. Boring is safe." She put the car back in drive. "But my father doesn't believe in boring. If he can't find dirt, he'll manufacture it. So from now on, you need to be careful. Don't go anywhere alone if you can help it. Don't meet with anyone you don't know. And if anyone approaches you with questions about me or the company, you call me immediately." "You think he'd actually set me up?" "I think he'd do anything to win. And right now, you're the piece on the board he doesn't understand. That makes you dangerous." She drove him back to his truck, and before he got out, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small box. "What's this?" Ethan asked. "Wedding ring. You should probably start wearing it." He opened the box. The ring inside was simple, masculine, well-made. Not flashy, but not cheap either. "It's perfect," he said, surprised. "I know." Vanessa smiled slightly. "I'm good at my job, Ethan, even the parts that aren't about business." He slipped the ring on. It fit perfectly, which shouldn't have surprised him, but did anyway. "Thank you," he said. "Don't thank me. Just don't lose it. And don't take it off." She looked at him seriously. "From this moment forward, you're committed. No half measures, no second thoughts. We're in this together until the end." "I know. Do you?" Her eyes were dark in the dim light. "Because my father is going to make you regret this, Ethan. He's going to find every weakness, every fear, every pressure point, and he's going to push until something breaks." "Then we don't break," Ethan said. Vanessa studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded, once, sharp and final. "Then we don't break." He got out of the car and watched her drive away, the ring heavy on his finger, and he wondered how many more dinners, how many more tests, how many more lies he'd have to survive before this was over. The answer came sooner than he expected. Monday morning, a building inspector showed up at his shop. Tuesday, the fire marshal found violations that Ethan was certain hadn't existed the week before. Wednesday, his insurance company called to inform him that his policy was being reviewed due to irregularities in coverage history. By Thursday, Ethan was sitting across from his lawyer, a overworked public defender he'd used once for a contract dispute, trying to figure out how everything had gone wrong so fast. "Someone's targeting you," the lawyer said, flipping through the stack of citations and notices. "This isn't random. This is coordinated." "Can they do that?" "If they've got enough money and the right connections, yeah." They can make your life hell without ever breaking a law. The lawyer looked at him seriously. What did you do, Ethan? Who did you piss off? Ethan thought about Richard Hart, about the Sunday dinner, about the way the older man had smiled when Ethan refused to back down. Someone powerful, he said. Then you need to either apologize or lawyer up properly, because what you're facing here isn't something I can fix with phone calls. Ethan called Vanessa from the parking lot. He's coming after the shop, he said without preamble. Inspections, violations, insurance reviews, everything at once. I know, I have people monitoring the citations. Her voice was tight. How bad is it? Bad enough that I might have to close until it's resolved, which means no income, which means I'll cover it. Whatever you lose, I'll cover. That's not the point, Vanessa. He's trying to destroy everything I've built. No, he's trying to make you desperate enough to walk away from me. Don't give him that. She was quiet for a moment. I'm calling a press conference for tomorrow. I'm going to announce a new initiative to support small businesses in the industrial district, including direct grants for shops facing regulatory harassment. You're going to use this against him. I'm going to make it politically impossible for him to continue targeting you without looking like he's attacking the exact businesses his daughter is trying to help. She sounded almost satisfied. My father taught me everything I know about corporate warfare. He's going to regret that. The press conference happened Friday morning. Vanessa stood in front of cameras, polished and perfect, announcing a $10 million fund to support local manufacturing. She named Ethan's shop specifically as an example of the kind of quality craftsmanship the city needed to preserve. By Friday afternoon, the citations had been quietly withdrawn. The insurance review was dropped. The fire marshal sent a formal apology for the clerical error. Richard Hart didn't call, didn't text, didn't acknowledge what had happened. But that night, Ethan's shop was broken into. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was damaged. But someone had been inside, had walked through his workspace, had left a single message spray-painted on the wall. You can't win. Ethan stood in his shop at 2 a.m, staring at the words. And he realized that Vanessa had been right about everything. This wasn't a game. This wasn't a business arrangement. This was a war. And Richard Hart was just getting started. The police came at dawn. 2 detectives in cheap suits, flashing badges and asking questions about the break-in with the kind of bored efficiency that suggested they'd already decided nothing would come of it. Ethan stood in his shop, still wearing yesterday's clothes, watching them photograph the spray-painted message while a forensics tech dusted for prints that everyone knew wouldn't be there. Any idea who might have done this? The older detective asked, not bothering to look up from his notepad. No. No enemies, no disgruntled customers, no business disputes? Ethan thought about Richard Hart, about the systematic attacks on his shop, about the way power worked when you had enough of it to make the law irrelevant. No, he said again. The detective finally looked at him. Mr. Mercer, I'm going to be straight with you. Break-ins like this, no theft, just vandalism. 9 times out of 10, it's personal. Someone's trying to send you a message. You sure there's nothing you want to tell us? I'm sure. The detective sighed and closed his notepad. All right. We'll file a report. If you think of anything, give us a call. In the meantime, you might want to invest in better locks or cameras. They left 20 minutes later and Ethan was alone with the message on his wall. He took a photo of it, sent it to Vanessa, then grabbed a paint roller and spent the next hour covering it with primer. The words bled through the first coat. He had to do 3 layers before they finally disappeared. His phone rang while he was cleaning the roller. Vanessa's name appeared on the screen. I'm sending security, she said without preamble. A team will be there within the hour to install cameras and reinforce your locks. Don't argue. I wasn't going to. Good. And Ethan, I think it's time Lily met me. My father is escalating. If he's willing to break into your shop, he's willing to go after your family. She needs to understand what's happening before it gets worse. Ethan set down the roller. She's 7, Vanessa. How am I supposed to explain this to her? You tell her the truth. Not all of it, but enough. You tell her that some people don't like the fact that we got married and that they might try to cause problems, but that she's safe and we're handling it. Vanessa's voice softened slightly. Kids are more resilient than adults give them credit for. She'll be okay. When do you want to meet her? Tomorrow. Lunch. Somewhere public and neutral. Not my place, not yours. There's a diner near the shop. Lily loves their pancakes. A diner? Vanessa sounded amused. All right, tomorrow at noon. And Ethan, try to get some sleep. You sound exhausted. She hung up before he could respond. Ethan stood in his shop, surrounded by the smell of fresh primer, and wondered how he was going to tell his daughter that the woman he'd married was about to drag them both into a war neither of them had asked for. The security team showed up an hour later, just as Vanessa had promised. 3 men in tactical gear who moved through his shop like they were securing a military installation. By the time they finished, Ethan had cameras covering every angle, motion sensors on the doors and windows, and a reinforced lock system that looked like it belonged on a bank vault. Anyone tries to get in here again, the team leader said, handing Ethan a tablet linked to the camera feeds. You'll know about it immediately, and so will we. You're monitoring this? 24/7, Mrs. Hart's orders. The man's expression was completely neutral. You need anything else, you call this number. Someone will respond within minutes. They left, and Ethan was alone again. He pulled up the camera feeds on the tablet, watching different angles of his empty shop. It felt surreal. A week ago, he'd been worried about making rent. Now he had private security monitoring his business like he was someone worth protecting. He grabbed his keys and headed home to tell Lily about lunch tomorrow. She was in the backyard when he arrived, building something elaborate out of sticks and string. Mrs. Chen was sitting on the back steps, reading a paperback and keeping one eye on Lily's construction project. Engineering phase, Mrs. Chen said when Ethan sat down beside her. Last week it was painting. Week before that, cooking. This child cannot sit still. She gets that from her mother, Ethan said without thinking. Mrs. Chen looked at him sharply. You never talk about her mother. I know. You going to start now? No. Ethan watched Lily tie another knot, her tongue sticking out in concentration. But my new wife wants to meet Lily tomorrow. Lunch at Morrison's. The new wife you married 2 weeks ago without telling anyone. That's the one. Mrs. Chen was quiet for a moment. She good to you? Yeah, she's good. And this lunch, you nervous? Terrified. Good. Means you care. Mrs. Chen patted his knee and stood up. Lily's a smart girl. She'll see right through any nonsense, so make sure your wife knows that. I will. Mrs. Chen headed inside, leaving Ethan alone with his daughter's construction project and his own spiraling anxiety about tomorrow. Lily appeared at his side 10 minutes later, covered in dirt and looking pleased with herself. I built a bridge, she announced. I can see that. Very impressive. It's strong enough to hold rocks. I tested it. She sat down beside him. Mrs. Chen said you're taking me to lunch tomorrow. Yeah, at Morrison's. You can get pancakes if you want. Who's coming with us? Ethan took a breath. Vanessa, my wife. I thought it was time you two met. Lily picked at a scab on her knee. Is she nice? She is. She's different from people you know. She works a lot. She's very busy, but she wants to meet you. Does she know I was sick? The question caught him off guard. Yeah, she knows. And she married you anyway? Yeah, sweetheart. She married me anyway. Lily nodded slowly, processing. Okay, I'll meet her. But if I don't like her, I'm going to tell you. I wouldn't expect anything less. That night, Ethan lay in bed and tried to imagine how the lunch would go. Vanessa, polished and controlled, sitting across from Lily, messy and curious and brutally honest. Two people from completely different worlds, connected only by the lie he was desperately trying to make look real. He texted Vanessa at midnight. Lily's excited to meet you. Just be yourself. Her response came back immediately. I don't think that's good advice, but I'll try. Morrison's Diner was exactly the kind of place Vanessa Hart had probably never set foot in. Cracked vinyl booze, laminated menus sticky with syrup, a jukebox that only played country music from the 80s. But it was Lily's favorite place in the world, and Ethan figured if they were going to do this, they should do it somewhere his daughter felt comfortable. They arrived 10 minutes early. Lily had insisted on wearing her best dress, the blue one with flowers that she usually saved for birthdays. She'd also insisted on brushing her own hair, which meant it looked like she'd brushed it with a fork, but Ethan didn't have the heart to fix it. What if she doesn't like me? Lily asked, swinging her legs under the table. She's going to love you. How could she not? What if I don't like her? Then you tell me, and we figure it out. What if she's mean? She's not mean, Lily. She's just... Ethan stopped as the door opened. Vanessa walked in, and every head in the diner turned to look at her. She was dressed down, jeans, a simple sweater, but she still looked like she'd stepped out of a different reality. She spotted them immediately and walked over, her expression carefully neutral. "Hi," she said, sliding into the booth across from them. "Hi," Ethan said. Lily stared at her with the unblinking intensity of a child who'd been given permission to evaluate an adult. Vanessa turned to face her directly. "You must be Lily. I'm Vanessa." "I know you married my dad." "I did." "Why?" Vanessa blinked, clearly not expecting the question. "Because I like him, and he makes me laugh." "He's not that funny," Lily said seriously. Ethan felt his face go hot. "Lily, it's fine," Vanessa said, and to Ethan's surprise, she was smiling. Not the polished professional smile, but something smaller, more real. "You're right, he's not that funny, but he's kind and honest, and he cares about the people he loves. Those things are more important than being funny." Lily considered this. "Do you like pancakes?" "I don't know. I've never had them." The silence that followed was profound. Lily looked at Ethan like Vanessa had just admitted to never breathing oxygen. "You've never had pancakes?" Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "No, I don't really eat breakfast." "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard." Lily turned to Ethan. "Dad, she needs pancakes. Right now." The waitress appeared, and Lily took charge, ordering a stack of chocolate chip pancakes for Vanessa with the authority of someone conducting a medical intervention. Vanessa didn't argue. She just watched Lily with something that looked like fascination. When the food arrived, Lily insisted on showing Vanessa the proper way to eat pancakes, which apparently involved drowning them in syrup and eating them with your hands. Vanessa followed instructions exactly, and Ethan watched the most powerful businesswoman he'd ever met take advice on breakfast food from a 7-year-old. "These are good," Vanessa said, sounding genuinely surprised. "I know," Lily said. "That's why I come here all the time. Well, not all the time, but sometimes. When Dad has money." Ethan winced. Vanessa's expression didn't change. "What do you like to do, Lily?" Vanessa asked. "Besides eat pancakes." "I build things, and I read, and sometimes I paint, but I'm not very good at it." Lily took a huge bite of pancake. "What do you do?" "I run a company. We build buildings and develop properties." "That sounds boring." "Sometimes it is," Vanessa admitted. "But sometimes it's like solving a very complicated puzzle. You have to figure out how all the pieces fit together, and if you do it right, you create something that helps people." "Like what?" "Like the new park downtown, we built that, and the community center with the indoor pool." Lily's eyes widened. "The one with the really tall slide?" "That's the one." "I love that slide." Lily looked at Vanessa with new respect. "Okay, you're pretty cool." Vanessa smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "Thank you. So are you." They spent the next hour talking. Lily asked questions with the blunt curiosity of someone who'd never learned to be polite, and Vanessa answered them with more patience than Ethan had known she possessed. She didn't talk down to Lily, didn't simplify things unnecessarily. She just treated her like a small person worth having a real conversation with. By the time they left, Lily had decided Vanessa was acceptable, which in 7-year-old terms was basically a ringing endorsement. "She's okay," Lily told Ethan as they walked to the truck. Vanessa had left 10 minutes earlier, citing a meeting she couldn't miss. "I thought she'd be meaner." "Why would you think that?" "Because rich people are always mean on TV." "Not all rich people are mean, sweetheart." "I know. Vanessa's nice. Weird, but nice." Lily climbed into the truck. "Are you going to live with her?" "Eventually, yeah." "Can I come visit?" "Of course, whenever you want." Lily nodded, satisfied. "Okay, I like her. You can keep her." Ethan drove home feeling like maybe, just maybe, one part of this mess was going to work out. That feeling lasted exactly 2 days. Monday morning, Ethan got a call from Lily's school. The principal needed to see him immediately. There was a problem with Lily's custody paperwork. He arrived at the school 20 minutes later, his stomach in knots. The principal, a tired-looking woman named Mrs. Reeves, met him in her office with a file folder and an expression that suggested she'd rather be anywhere else. "Mr. Mercer, thank you for coming in. We've received some concerning information regarding Lily's custody status. Ethan sat down slowly. What kind of information? A representative from Child Protective Services contacted us this morning. They've received a report suggesting that Lily may be in an unsafe living situation. Something about recent instability in your household. The room tilted. That's not true. Lily's fine. She's healthy. She's happy. I'm not accusing you of anything, Mr. Mercer. I'm simply informing you that CPS is opening an investigation. They'll be conducting a home visit within the week. In the meantime, I'm required to document this conversation and monitor Lily's well-being while she's at school. Who made the report? That information is confidential. Of course it is. Ethan stood up, his hands shaking. This is harassment. Someone is using CPS to attack me. Mr. Mercer, I understand you're upset, but I need you to stay calm. The investigation will determine whether there's any merit to the concerns. Until then, the best thing you can do is cooperate fully. Ethan walked out of the school feeling like he'd been punched in the chest. He sat in his truck in the parking lot and called Vanessa. Someone reported me to CPS, he said when she picked up. They're investigating my custody of Lily. Vanessa was silent for 3 seconds. Your father. My father would absolutely do this. It's exactly his style. Create a problem, force you to defend yourself, use the defense as evidence of instability. Her voice was tight with fury. How long until the home visit? Within the week. Okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm hiring a family lawyer, the best one in the state. They'll be at the home visit with you. We're also going to document everything, Lily's school records, medical records, every piece of evidence that proves you're a good father. And we're going to make it very clear to CPS that this report is malicious and politically motivated. What if they don't care? What if they take her anyway? They won't. I won't let them. Vanessa's voice was steel. But Ethan, this changes things. We need to move faster. The board vote is in 6 weeks. If we can push it up, get it over with before my father can do any more damage. How do you push up a board vote? I call in favors. I make it impossible for them to delay. I force the issue. She paused. But it's going to be messy. My father will know we're making a move. He'll counter. Hard. I don't care. Do it. I'm not letting him use my daughter as leverage. Then we're agreed. I'm accelerating everything. And Ethan, from now on, you and Lily need to be visible with me. Public appearances, dinner at my apartment, family outings. We need to look like the most stable, functional family in the city. Lily's going to ask questions. Then we answer them, honestly, age-appropriately, but we answer them. Vanessa took a breath. I'm coming over tonight. We need to prepare for the CPS visit, and we need to tell Lily what's happening, together. She hung up, and Ethan sat in his truck staring at the school building, wondering how everything had spiraled so far out of control so fast. Vanessa arrived at 7, carrying takeout from a Thai place Lily had never heard of and a leather portfolio that probably contained enough legal documents to bury someone. Lily answered the door, took one look at the food containers, and immediately declared that Vanessa was now her favorite person. They ate at the kitchen table, Lily chattering about her day, while Ethan and Vanessa exchanged looks that said everything they couldn't say out loud. After dinner, Vanessa helped Lily with her homework, fractions, which Vanessa explained with the kind of precision that made Lily actually understand them, and then Ethan sent Lily to brush her teeth while he and Vanessa prepared for the conversation they'd been avoiding. When Lily came back, Vanessa was sitting on the couch, her posture perfect, but her expression open. Ethan sat beside her, and Lily climbed into the armchair across from them, sensing that something serious was about to happen. Lily, Ethan started, we need to talk to you about something important. Am I in trouble? No, sweetheart, you're not in trouble, but someone is trying to cause problems for our family. Someone who doesn't like the fact that Vanessa and I got married. Lily looked at Vanessa. Your dad? Vanessa's eyebrows rose. How did you know that? Because Mrs. Chen says that when rich people get married, their parents always hate it. She watches a lot of TV. Lily swung her legs. Is he mean? Sometimes, Vanessa said honestly. He thinks he knows what's best for everyone, and he doesn't like it when people disagree with him. Right now, he's disagreeing with me about your dad. Why? Because he thinks I should have married someone more like him. someone rich and powerful and connected. He doesn't understand why I'd choose someone real. Lily considered this. That's dumb. I agree, Vanessa said. But dumb or not, he's trying to make things difficult, which means some people might come to our house and ask questions about how we live and whether you're being taken care of properly. But I'm being taken care of. We know that. But we have to prove it to them. Which means we're going to have some visitors in the next few days, and they're going to ask you questions. And I need you to tell them the truth. Just answer honestly. Don't try to make things sound better or worse than they are. Just tell them what your life is actually like. Lily nodded slowly. Okay, and then they'll leave us alone? Yes, Ethan said, hoping it was true. And we can still get pancakes on Saturdays? Absolutely. Then I don't care. Lily slid off the chair. Can Vanessa stay tonight? I want to show her my bridge. Ethan looked at Vanessa. Vanessa looked at him. There was a question in her eyes, and Ethan realized she was actually asking permission. Yeah, he said. Vanessa can stay. Lily grabbed Vanessa's hand and dragged her outside to inspect the stick bridge, which had somehow survived 3 days of weather and was now decorated with leaves and rocks. Ethan watched through the window as Vanessa crouched in the dirt in her expensive jeans, examining the bridge's structural integrity with the same focus she probably brought to billion-dollar real estate deals. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You're going to lose everything. Walk away now while you still can. Ethan deleted it without responding. Then he went outside to join his daughter and his fake wife, and for just a few minutes, he let himself pretend that everything was going to be okay. The CPS investigator arrived on Thursday, a middle-aged woman named Patricia Flores with kind eyes and a clipboard that made Ethan's stomach drop. She was accompanied by the family lawyer Vanessa had hired, a sharp-looking man named David Chen, who had the kind of quiet confidence that suggested he'd won more cases than he'd lost. Mr. Mercer, Flores said, shaking his hand, thank you for making yourself available. I know these visits can be stressful, but I want to assure you that my only goal is to ensure Lily's safety and well-being. I'm not here to disrupt your family. I appreciate that. Is Lily home? She's at school. She'll be here in about an hour. Good. That gives us time to talk privately. May I come in? Ethan led her inside, hyper-aware of every flaw in the house. The carpet was old. The furniture was worn. The kitchen needed updating, but it was clean and it was safe and it was home. Flores spent an hour asking questions about his work, his finances, his relationship with Lily, about his marriage to Vanessa, how they'd met, why they'd moved so quickly, about Lily's health, her recovery, her current medical status. David Chen sat beside Ethan the entire time, occasionally interjecting to clarify a question or redirect when Flores veered too close to something that felt invasive. And Mrs. Mercer, Flores said, glancing at her notes. Vanessa. She's not here today? She's at work, but she'll be here when Lily gets home. How often does she stay here? A few nights a week. We're still figuring out the logistics. She has an apartment downtown and I have this place. Eventually, we'll consolidate, but right now we're taking it slow for Lily's sake. Flores nodded, writing something down. And how does Lily feel about Vanessa? She likes her. They get along well. Good. That's important. Flores set down her clipboard. Mr. Mercer, I want to be direct with you. The report we received suggested that your recent marriage was a financial arrangement designed to provide you with resources you couldn't otherwise access. Is there any truth to that? David Chen leaned forward. Ms. Flores, I'd advise my client not to. It's fine, Ethan said. He looked at Flores directly. My wife has money. A lot of it. I don't. That's not a secret. But I didn't marry her for her money. I married her because she sees me as more than just someone struggling to get by. She treats me like an equal. And yeah, her resources have helped with Lily's medical care. But that's what marriage is. You support each other. You share resources. There's nothing sinister about it. Flores studied him for a long moment. I believe you, Mr. Mercer, but I have to follow through with the investigation. That means I need to speak with Lily and with your wife. And I need to see documentation of Lily's care, medical records, school records, anything that demonstrates her well-being. We have all of that prepared, David Chen said, producing a folder from his briefcase. Complete medical history, school attendance records, teacher evaluations, and reference letters from neighbors and community members. Everything you need is here. Flores took the folder and started reading. Ethan sat in silence, watching her face for any sign of judgment or suspicion. But she just read, occasionally making notes, her expression neutral. Lily came home 20 minutes later, bursting through the door with her backpack and a handful of drawings she'd made in art class. She stopped when she saw Flores sitting at the kitchen table. "Hi," Lily said cautiously. "Hi, Lily. My name is Patricia. I work for an organization that helps families. I'm here to talk to you for a few minutes. Is that okay?" Lily looked at Ethan. He nodded. "Okay," Lily said. Flores asked Lily to show her around the house. Ethan and David Chen stayed in the kitchen while Lily gave Flores a tour, pointing out her room, the bathroom she'd recently redecorated with seashell stickers, the backyard where she built things. Ethan could hear their voices through the walls, Lily's high and excited, Flores's calm and encouraging. When they came back, Vanessa was standing in the kitchen. She'd arrived without anyone noticing, slipping in through the back door. She was still in her work clothes, tailored pants, a silk blouse, but she'd brought groceries. Expensive groceries. The kind that came in cloth bags instead of plastic. "Sorry I'm late," Vanessa said, setting the bags on the counter. "Traffic was terrible. You must be Ms. Flores." Flores stood, shaking Vanessa's hand. "Mrs. Mercer, thank you for coming." "Of course." Vanessa glanced at Lily. "Hey, kiddo, how was school?" "Good. We're learning about Egypt. Did you know they had cats as gods?" "I did know that. Very smart of them." Vanessa started unpacking groceries. "I brought stuff for dinner. I thought we could cook together." Flores watched this exchange with interest. "Mrs. Mercer, I'd like to ask you a few questions as well, if you don't mind." "Absolutely. Let me just get this put away." They sat at the table, Ethan, Vanessa, Flores, and David Chen, while Lily played in the living room, theoretically out of earshot, but probably listening to every word. Flores asked Vanessa the same question she'd asked Ethan, about the marriage, the timeline, the arrangement. Vanessa answered calmly, her responses perfectly aligned with what Ethan had said. "And you're comfortable with this living arrangement?" Flores asked. "Two separate residences?" "For now, yes. Lily's been through a lot with her health. We didn't want to disrupt her life more than necessary. She's comfortable here. This is her home. Eventually we'll figure out something more permanent, but right now, this works." "And your relationship with Lily?" "It's new, but it's good. She's a remarkable kid. Smart, curious, honest. I'm still figuring out how to be a stepmother, but I'm learning." Flores smiled slightly. "That's a very honest answer. I don't see the point in being anything else." The interview lasted another 30 minutes. Flores asked about finances, about Vanessa's work schedule, about how they plan to balance careers and parenting. Vanessa answered everything with the same calm directness, never defensive, never evasive. When it was over, Flores stood and closed her folder. "Thank you both for your time, and thank you, Lily, for showing me around. You have a very nice home." "Thanks," Lily called from the living room. "I'll be submitting my report within the week," Flores said to Ethan. "Based on what I've seen today, I don't anticipate any issues. Lily is clearly well cared for, happy, and thriving. The report that initiated this investigation appears to be unfounded." Ethan felt something loosen in his chest. "Thank you. However," Flores continued, "I do want to caution you. Whoever filed that report may try again. If they do, document everything. Keep records. Make sure you can demonstrate consistent, stable care. The best defense against malicious reports is an overwhelming amount of evidence." "We understand," Vanessa said. Flores left, David Chen following her out to handle paperwork. When they were gone, Ethan sat down hard at the kitchen table and put his head in his hands. "We passed," he said. "We passed," Vanessa confirmed. She was still standing by the counter, her hands gripping the edge. "But my father's not going to stop. This was just the opening move." "Then what's next?" "The board vote. I pushed it up to next Friday, 1 week from tomorrow. If I win, I secure my position and my father loses his leverage. If I lose, you won't lose." "I might." Vanessa finally sat down. "The vote's going to be close, closer than I'd like. And my father has a week to turn votes against me. He's going to use everything he has, including you. Let him. We've already survived the worst he can throw at us." Vanessa looked at him, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked uncertain, vulnerable. "You don't know that," she said quietly. "You don't know what he's capable of." From the living room, Lily called out, "Are we still making dinner? I'm starving." Vanessa stood up, smoothing her shirt. "Yes, we're making dinner. Come help me figure out what to do with all this food." Lily bounded into the kitchen, and for the next hour they cooked together. Vanessa reading recipes off her phone, Lily measuring ingredients with intense focus, Ethan trying not to burn anything. It felt normal, domestic, real. And for just a little while, Ethan let himself forget that in 1 week, everything would come crashing down. The week before the board vote was the longest week of Ethan's life. Vanessa worked 18-hour days meeting with board members, calling in favors, building coalitions. Ethan barely saw her except in carefully staged public appearances, dinner at an expensive restaurant, a charity gala where they danced and smiled while cameras flashed, a morning jog through the park that Vanessa's PR team had somehow turned into a photo opportunity. Every appearance was calculated, every moment designed to project stability, happiness, commitment. It was exhausting. Richard Hart, meanwhile, was everywhere. On the news, in the papers, giving interviews about the future of Hart Industries and the importance of experienced leadership. He never mentioned Vanessa directly. He didn't have to. The implication was clear. 3 days before the vote, Ethan's truck was vandalized. All 4 tires slashed. The word fraud keyed into the driver's side door. The cameras he'd installed caught nothing. Whoever had done it knew exactly where the blind spots were. 2 days before the vote, someone leaked Ethan's financial records to the press. Every late payment, every missed bill, every desperate attempt to keep his head above water. All of it published in a business journal with a headline that read, "Hart CEO's Husband, a Financial Liability." Vanessa's PR team went into overdrive, spinning the story as an attack on working-class families, turning Ethan into a symbol of resilience rather than weakness. It worked, mostly. But the damage was done. One day before the vote, Lily came home from school crying. Ethan found her in her room, face buried in her pillow, her shoulders shaking. He sat on the edge of her bed and put a hand on her back. "What happened?" "Kids at school," she said, her voice muffled. "They said you married Vanessa for money. They said you're a gold digger. I didn't know what that meant, so I asked Mrs. Reeves and she got really mad at them, but they still said it." Ethan felt rage rise in his chest, hot and immediate. "Those kids don't know what they're talking about, Lily." "But is it true? Did you marry her for money?" The question hung in the air. Ethan thought about the contract in his safe, about the $50,000 he'd already earned, about the $200,000 waiting for him at the end. "I married her because she needed help," he said carefully. "And because she could help us, too. But that doesn't mean I don't care about her, and it doesn't mean our family isn't real." Lily turned over, her eyes red. "Do you love her?" Ethan opened his mouth, closed it. He thought about Vanessa standing in his kitchen, unpacking groceries. Vanessa helping Lily with homework. Vanessa sitting across from him at Sunday dinner, unflinching under her father's attacks. "Yeah," he said, surprised by the truth of it. "Yeah, I think I do." Lily studied his face. "Then it doesn't matter what those kids say, because you know the truth." She rolled over and went back to her pillow, apparently done with the conversation. Ethan sat there for another minute, processing what had just happened. He thought he'd been protecting Lily from the truth, but maybe she'd been protecting him. He texted Vanessa. "Lily asked if I love you. I said yes." Her response came back 10 minutes later. "Did you mean it?" Ethan stared at the question for a long time. Then he typed, "I don't know. Maybe." Vanessa didn't respond. The board vote was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. Ethan spent the morning at his shop, trying to work but mostly just watching the clock. Vanessa had told him not to come to the meeting. Board votes were private, executive, no guests allowed. But at 1:30, his phone rang. Vanessa's name on the screen. "Change of plans," she said. "I need you here. Now. Bring Lily." "What? Why?" "My father leaked our contract, the original one. The $50,000, the 6-hour arrangement, all of it. It's on every news site. The board is questioning whether our marriage is legitimate. I need you here to prove that it is." Ethan felt the world tilt. "Vanessa, please. I know this isn't what we agreed. I know this is exposing Lily to more than we wanted, but if we don't do this, I lose everything. And so do you. Please, Ethan, I need you." He looked at the clock. 1:32. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said. He picked up Lily from school, told the office it was a family emergency, and drove downtown faster than he should have. Lily sat in the passenger seat, quiet and wide-eyed, sensing that something huge was happening but not asking questions. They arrived at Hart Industries at 1:58. Vanessa was waiting in the lobby, pacing, her phone pressed to her ear. When she saw them, she ended the call and walked over. "Thank you for coming," she said. "What do you need us to do?" "Come upstairs, stand beside me. Let them see that we're real." She looked at Lily. "Hey, kiddo, I'm sorry to pull you out of school." "It's okay," Lily said. "Are you in trouble?" "Yeah, kind of." "Is my dad going to help?" "I hope so." They took the elevator to the top floor where the boardroom was. Through the glass walls, Ethan could see a long table surrounded by men and women in suits. Richard Hart sat at the head of the table, looking calm and satisfied. Vanessa stopped outside the door. "When we go in there, they're going to ask questions about how we met, about the contract, about whether this marriage is real or just a business arrangement. I need you to tell the truth, not the sanitized version, the real truth. Can you do that?" Ethan took her hand. "Yeah, we can do that." Vanessa squeezed his hand once. Then she opened the door and walked into the boardroom, Ethan and Lily right behind her. Every face turned to look at them. Richard Hart's smile widened, and the final battle began. The boardroom fell silent as Vanessa walked to the head of the table, Ethan and Lily flanking her like shields she hadn't known she needed. 14 board members sat in their leather chairs, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Richard Hart remained perfectly still, his hands folded on the table, watching his daughter with the patience of a predator who'd already won. "Thank you all for accommodating this irregularity," Vanessa said, her voice steady despite the tension crackling through the room. "I know we don't typically allow guests at board meetings, but given the nature of the accusations being leveled against me, I felt it was important that you meet the people at the center of this conversation. This is my husband, Ethan Mercer, and this is his daughter, Lily." Lily waved awkwardly. A few board members nodded in acknowledgement, most just stared. James Whitmore cleared his throat. "Vanessa, we've all seen the documents your father provided, the contract, the initial payment, the terms of your arrangement. I think we deserve an explanation." "You do," Vanessa agreed, "and you're going to get one. But first, I want to clarify something. Everything in that contract is real. I did pay Ethan $50,000 to pretend to be my husband at a family dinner. That part is not in dispute." A murmur rippled through the room. Richard Hart's smile deepened. "However," Vanessa continued, "what that contract doesn't show is what happened after. It doesn't show the relationship that developed. It doesn't show the partnership we built. And it certainly doesn't show the life we're creating together." "A partnership built on deception," Richard said smoothly. "How convenient that you've developed feelings for someone you hired to play a role. How romantic." "You're right," Ethan said, speaking for the first time. Every head swiveled toward him. "It did start as deception. Vanessa needed someone to stand beside her at a dinner where she knew she'd be attacked. I needed money to keep my daughter healthy, so we made a deal. A business transaction, nothing more." He could feel Lily's eyes on him, could sense her confusion, but he kept going. "But somewhere between that first dinner and now, something changed. I started seeing who Vanessa actually is. Not the CEO, not Richard Hart's daughter, just Vanessa. Someone who works herself to exhaustion because she cares about doing things right. Someone who learned how to make pancakes because my daughter told her she had to. Someone who stands up to people twice as powerful as her because she refuses to be controlled." Ethan looked directly at Richard. "You wanted me to be a problem for her. You wanted me to be the weak link, the liability, the proof that she makes bad decisions. But the only bad decision in this room is the one where a father tries to destroy his own daughter because she won't obey him." The silence that followed was absolute. Richard Hart's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Something cold and calculating. "How touching," Richard said. "Though I notice you didn't deny the original arrangement. You took money to deceive this family, to deceive this board. And now we're supposed to believe that somewhere along the way, it became real?" He shook his head. "Forgive me if I find that difficult to accept." "I don't care if you accept it," Ethan said. "I'm not here for your approval. I'm here because Vanessa asked me to be, and I'll stand beside her whether you like it or not. Lily tugged on Ethan's sleeve. Dad, can I say something? Ethan looked down at her, surprised. Lily, I don't think... Please, I want to say something. Vanessa crouched down to Lily's level. It's okay. You can speak if you want to. Lily looked around the room at all the serious faces watching her. Then she walked forward until she was standing directly in front of Richard Hart. You're Vanessa's dad, right? She asked. Richard looked at her with the kind of polite interest usually reserved for pets. That's correct. My dad says you're trying to hurt Vanessa because you don't like that she married him. Your father has an interesting perspective on family dynamics. I think you're mean, Lily said bluntly. My dad's a good person. He takes care of me when I'm sick. He works really hard even when he's tired. And he married Vanessa because he likes her, not because of money. I know that because I asked him. And my dad doesn't lie to me. Richard's smile thinned. Children often believe what they're told without understanding the complexities underneath. I'm not stupid, Lily said. I know they got married fast. I know it's weird. But I also know that Vanessa comes over and helps me with homework and listens when I talk about stuff. And I know my dad looks at her the way he used to look at my mom in the pictures. So maybe it started weird, but it's not weird anymore. She turned to face the rest of the board. You should let Vanessa keep being the boss. She's good at it. And she's not going to mess up just because she has a family now. That's dumb. Lily walked back to Ethan, apparently satisfied with her contribution. Ethan put a hand on her shoulder, equal parts proud and terrified of what would happen next. One of the board members, an older woman Ethan didn't recognize, was smiling slightly. Out of the mouths of babes, she murmured. Richard Hart stood up. This is touching, truly, but we're not here to be swayed by emotional appeals from a child. We're here to vote on whether Vanessa Hart is fit to continue leading this company, and the evidence suggests she's not. She entered into a fraudulent marriage to manipulate this board. She hired someone to play a role, and when that role was exposed, she scrambled to make it look legitimate. This is not the behavior of someone with sound judgment. You leaked the contract, Vanessa said quietly. You violated attorney-client privilege to obtain a private document, and then you disseminated it to the press knowing it would cause maximum damage. And you want to talk about judgment? I did what was necessary to protect this company from your recklessness. No, you did what was necessary to maintain control, because that's all this has ever been about. Control. Vanessa's voice rose, the first crack in her composure. You gave me this position 3 years ago thinking I'd fail. And when I succeeded, when I grew the company beyond anything you'd accomplished, you couldn't handle it. So you started looking for ways to tear me down. The marriage was just the excuse you needed. You're upset, Richard said calmly. I understand, but perhaps this emotional outburst demonstrates exactly why. I'm not finished. Vanessa cut him off, and the steel in her voice made everyone sit up straighter. You want to talk about the original contract? Fine. Let's talk about it. Yes, I paid Ethan to attend a dinner. Yes, it was a transaction. But you know what I bought with that $50,000? I bought 6 hours of being treated like an equal. 6 hours of standing beside someone who didn't want anything from me except what I'd already agreed to give. 6 hours of not being manipulated or controlled or judged. She looked around the table, meeting each board member's eyes. And in those 6 hours, I realized something. I realized that I'd been so focused on proving myself to my father, on meeting his impossible standards, that I'd forgotten what it felt like to just be myself. Ethan gave me that. Not because he was paid to, but because he didn't know any other way to be. Vanessa's voice softened. So yeah, it started as a business deal. But it became something real because we both chose to make it real. We chose honesty over convenience. We chose partnership over pretense. And we chose each other over everything my father offered us to walk away. She turned back to Richard. You offered Ethan $300,000 to talk. He said no. You could have offered him $1 million, $10 million, and he still would have said no. Because some people can't be bought. Some people have integrity that money can't touch. I know that's a foreign concept to you, but it's true. Richard Hart stared at his daughter for a long moment. Then he looked at Ethan. Is that true? I offered you $300,000? You did, Ethan confirmed. And you refused. I did. Why? Because she asked me to. Richard laughed. It was a genuine laugh, startled and almost admiring. You turned down $300,000 because my daughter asked you to. That's either the most loyal thing I've ever heard or the most foolish. Probably both, Ethan admitted. Richard sat back down, and for the first time since Ethan had met him, the older man looked uncertain, like he'd encountered a variable he hadn't accounted for and didn't know how to process. This board has a decision to make, Richard said finally. We can believe that Vanessa's marriage is legitimate and allow her to continue in her position, or we can recognize it for what it clearly is, a calculated move to create the appearance of stability, and vote accordingly. I know where I stand. The question is, where do the rest of you stand? James Whitmore raised his hand. I'd like to hear from Mr. Mercer directly. No more speeches. Just answer this. If Vanessa lost this vote today, if she lost her position and her standing, would you still be married to her tomorrow? The room went silent again. Every eye turned to Ethan. He thought about the contract sitting in his safe at home, about the $200,000 he'd never receive if they ended this now, about the security and stability and future he'd been promised. Then he looked at Vanessa, at the exhaustion in her eyes, at the way she was holding herself together through sheer force of will, at the woman who'd helped his daughter with fractions and learned to make pancakes and stood beside him when her father tried to bury him. Yeah, Ethan said. I would, because none of this was ever really about her job. It was about her, and that's not going to change based on what happens in this room. Vanessa's eyes widened slightly, like she hadn't expected that answer. Whitmore nodded slowly. All right, I've heard enough. I'm ready to vote. Wait, said the older woman who'd smiled at Lily earlier. Her nameplate read Margaret Voss. I have a question for Vanessa. You've spent a lot of time defending your marriage, but what about defending your work? What about defending your actual record as CEO? Because from where I'm sitting, your performance speaks for itself. I'm glad you think so, Vanessa said carefully. I do. Revenue is up 32% since you took over. Stock price has nearly doubled. We've completed 4 major developments under budget and ahead of schedule. The Riverside project alone generated more positive press than this company has seen in a decade. Voss looked around the table. So why are we even having this conversation? Why are we letting Richard distract us with personal attacks when the numbers are this clear? Because leadership is about more than numbers, Richard said. It's about judgment, character, the ability to make sound decisions under pressure. And Vanessa has demonstrated all of those things, Voss countered. She identified a problem, your interference in her personal life, and she solved it. Creatively, perhaps. Unconventionally, certainly, but effectively. The fact that the solution turned into something real doesn't undermine the initial judgment. If anything, it proves she's adaptable. Another board member spoke up, a younger man Ethan didn't recognize. I agree with Margaret. This feels like a manufactured crisis. Yes, the marriage started as a transaction, but so do a lot of marriages if we're being honest. Arranged marriages, marriages of convenience, marriages for citizenship or inheritance or social status, they happen all the time. Some of them fail, some of them work. The fact that Vanessa's marriage started transactionally doesn't automatically disqualify her from leadership. Richard's jaw tightened. So we're just going to ignore the deception, the manipulation? We're going to acknowledge that Vanessa did what she felt was necessary to protect herself from your interference, Voss said. And we're going to vote based on her actual performance as CEO, not on your personal vendetta against her marriage. Lily tugged on Ethan's sleeve again. Are they fighting? She whispered. Yes, sweetheart, but I think Vanessa's winning. The debate continued for another 20 minutes. Board members argued back and forth, some siding with Richard, most gravitating toward Voss's position. Ethan watched Vanessa stand perfectly still throughout it all, her expression neutral, giving nothing away. Finally, Whitmore called for the vote. All in favor of maintaining Vanessa Hart as CEO of Hart Industries, raise your hand. Ethan counted. 8 hands went up, 8 out of 14. All opposed, 5 hands, Richard's among them. Abstentions? 1 hand. A middle-aged man who looked deeply uncomfortable. Whitmore tallied the results. 8 in favor, 5 opposed, 1 abstention. The motion passes. Vanessa Hart will remain as CEO. Vanessa's shoulders dropped half an inch, the only sign that she'd been tense at all. Richard Hart stood up slowly. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Voss said firmly. You lost, Richard. Accept it gracefully. I built this company, Richard said, his voice low and dangerous. I turned it into what it is today, and I'm supposed to just stand by while my daughter runs it into the ground with her reckless personal decisions? She's not running it into the ground, Whitmore said. She's running it better than you ever did. That's what's really bothering you, isn't it? That she's succeeding without you, that she doesn't need your approval or your guidance, that she's better at this than you were. Richard's face went pale, then red. He grabbed his briefcase and walked toward the door, stopping when he reached Vanessa. You think you've won, he said quietly, but you've traded your father for a stranger. You've chosen someone who can't possibly understand your world, who can't possibly give you what you need. And when this all falls apart, and it will fall apart, you'll realize what you've lost. I know exactly what I've lost, Vanessa said. A father who sees me as a possession instead of a person. I'm okay with that. Richard stared at her for another long moment. Then he turned and walked out, the door closing behind him with a soft click. The remaining board members began gathering their things, offering quiet congratulations to Vanessa as they left. Voss stopped on her way out and shook Vanessa's hand. That took courage, she said. Both the marriage and standing up to your father. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Thank you, Margaret. When the room was finally empty except for Vanessa, Ethan, and Lily, Vanessa sat down hard in one of the chairs and put her head in her hands. I can't believe that actually worked, she said, her voice muffled. Ethan sat down beside her. You okay? No. Yes, I don't know. She looked up at him. Did you mean what you said? About staying married even if I lost? Yeah, I meant it. Why? Ethan glanced at Lily, who was exploring the boardroom with unabashed curiosity, running her hands along the expensive table. Because somewhere in the last few weeks, this stopped being about the contract. I don't know when it happened exactly. Maybe it was watching you help Lily with homework. Maybe it was the CPS visit. Maybe it was just, I don't know, spending time with you, getting to know you, realizing that underneath all the armor, you're just a person trying to do the right thing. Vanessa was quiet for a long time. I didn't expect this to be real, she said finally. I thought we'd play our parts, survive 18 months, and walk away. But now it's complicated. Now it's complicated, she agreed. Lily appeared at Vanessa's elbow. Can we go home now? I'm tired of being in this building. Vanessa smiled. Yeah, we can go home. They rode the elevator down in silence, exhaustion settling over all three of them like a blanket. Outside, the press was waiting. Cameras flashed as they exited the building, reporters shouting questions about the vote, about the contract, about whether the marriage was real. Vanessa ignored them all. She just put one arm around Lily, took Ethan's hand with her other, and walked to her car. The cameras captured it all. The tired CEO, the blue-collar husband, the 7-year-old girl between them. By tomorrow, the photo would be everywhere. The headline would read something like, Hart CEO keeps position, defends marriage. Or maybe love wins at Hart Industries board vote. But right now, sitting in Vanessa's car while she drove them back to Ethan's house, none of that mattered. Right now, they were just three people who'd survived something terrible together and were too tired to process what came next. Vanessa pulled into Ethan's driveway and turned off the car. She didn't move to get out. I should go, she said. You both need rest, and I have about 1,000 calls to make. Or you could stay, Ethan said. Vanessa looked at him. Stay? Yeah, have dinner with us. Regular food, nothing fancy. Put your phone away for a few hours. Just be here. I don't know if I remember how to just be anywhere. Then it's a good time to learn. Vanessa considered this. Then she pulled the keys from the ignition. Okay, I'll stay. Dinner was scrambled eggs and toast because it was all Ethan had the energy to make. They ate at the kitchen table, Lily chattering about the boardroom and all the serious people in suits, Vanessa answering her questions with more patience than Ethan had seen from her in weeks. After dinner, Lily dragged Vanessa outside to see the stick bridge, which had somehow survived another week and was now decorated with bottle caps Lily had found in the alley. Ethan watched from the kitchen window as Vanessa crouched in the dirt again, examining the engineering with genuine interest. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. Saw the news. You okay? Yeah, he typed back. We won. Good. That woman better be worth all this trouble. Ethan looked at Vanessa and Lily in the backyard, heads bent together over the bridge. She is, he replied. When Lily finally went to bed, after extracting a promise from Vanessa to come back tomorrow, Ethan and Vanessa sat on the back steps, watching the sky darken. What happens now? Ethan asked. I don't know, Vanessa admitted. The vote bought me time. Probably a year, maybe 2, before my father tries something else. But I'm still CEO. The company's still mine. That's what matters. And us? Vanessa was quiet for a moment. The contract says 18 months. We're only 4 months in. Technically, we still have 14 months to go. Technically. But nothing about this feels technical anymore, does it? No, Ethan said. It doesn't. Vanessa turned to look at him, and in the dim light from the kitchen window, she looked younger, less certain, more human. I don't know how to do this, she said. I don't know how to be in a real relationship. I've spent my entire adult life focused on work, on proving myself, on winning. I don't know how to just be with someone. Neither do I, Ethan admitted. My last relationship ended with her leaving in the middle of the night and never coming back. I'm not exactly an expert here. So what do we do? I don't know. Maybe we just keep doing what we're doing, keep showing up, keep being honest, keep figuring it out as we go. Vanessa leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. It was the first time she'd initiated physical contact that wasn't for show. That's a terrible plan. You have a better one? No. They sat in silence, and Ethan tried to remember the last time he'd felt this kind of peace. Not happiness, exactly. Not contentment, just peace. The absence of constant crisis. The presence of someone who understood. Thank you, Vanessa said quietly. For today. For all of it. You didn't have to stand up to my father like that. You didn't have to risk everything to defend me, but you did. You would have done the same for me, would I? She sounded uncertain. I like to think I would, but I don't know if I'm that brave. You're brave enough. You stood in front of that board and told the truth, even though it could have cost you everything. That's pretty brave. Vanessa was quiet for a long time. Then she said, When you told Lily you loved me, did you mean it? Ethan thought about lying, about deflecting, about keeping things safe and uncomplicated. Instead, he said, I'm starting to. Yeah. Vanessa lifted her head to look at him. Starting to? It's not something I planned. It's not something I was looking for. But yeah, I'm starting to love you. And that scares the hell out of me. Why? Because this was supposed to be temporary, safe, controlled. And now it's not any of those things. Now it's messy and complicated and real. And I don't know how to protect Lily from that. Or how to protect myself. Maybe you don't have to protect anyone, Vanessa said. Maybe we just have to be honest about what this is and trust that we can handle whatever comes next. That's a lot of trust. I know. She smiled slightly. But you turned down $300,000 because I asked you to. If that's not trust, I don't know what is. Ethan kissed her, not for cameras, not for appearances, just because he wanted to. And Vanessa kissed him back, and for the first time since this whole mess started, it felt like they were choosing each other instead of just surviving together. When they finally pulled apart, Vanessa rested her forehead against his. I should probably go. It's late. Probably. But I don't want to. Then don't. Vanessa smiled. You're making this very difficult. Good. She stayed another hour, curled up beside him on the back steps, talking about nothing important. About the boardroom vote. About Lily's drawings. About the Henderson Commission that Ethan still needed to finish. About mundane, ordinary things that felt extraordinary because they were happening together. When she finally left, Ethan stood in his driveway and watched her car disappear down the street. Then he went inside, checked on Lily, still asleep, surrounded by stuffed animals, and sat down at his kitchen table. He pulled out the contract from the safe. Read through it one more time. All the terms, all the conditions, all the carefully negotiated protections. Then he took a pen and wrote across the top, Void by mutual agreement. He'd give it to Vanessa tomorrow. They'd figure out what came next together, without contracts or conditions or predetermined endings. Just two people who'd started with a lie and somehow found their way to something true. His phone buzzed one more time before he went to bed. A text from Vanessa. "Thank you for today, for everything. I meant what I said in the boardroom. You gave me something I didn't know I needed. I'm not sure what happens next, but I'm glad we're figuring it out together." Ethan smiled and typed back, "Me too." He turned off the lights and headed to bed, and for the first time in months, he fell asleep without worrying about what crisis tomorrow would bring. Tomorrow would come regardless. But tonight, he'd won. They'd won. And that was enough. The morning after this board vote, Ethan woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from reporters. A few were from clients who'd seen the news and wanted to congratulate him or ask uncomfortable questions. One was from his lawyer, checking if he needed legal representation for the inevitable media circus. He ignored all of them, except the one from Vanessa. "Coming over at noon. We need to talk." That sounded ominous. Ethan made coffee, got Lily ready for school, and spent the morning finishing the Henderson Commission while trying not to imagine all the ways the conversation with Vanessa could go wrong. Maybe she'd changed her mind. Maybe the reality of what they'd admitted last night felt too heavy in the daylight. Maybe she'd decided the smart thing to do was end this before it got messier. She arrived exactly at noon, carrying 2 bags from a deli Ethan had never heard of, and wearing jeans that looked lived in instead of brand new. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. No makeup. She looked tired, but real. "Hi," she said. "Hi." They stood in his doorway for an awkward moment, neither quite sure how to navigate this new territory they'd stumbled into. Finally, Vanessa held up the bags. "I brought lunch. I didn't know what you liked, so I got 6 different sandwiches." 6? I was nervous. Ethan laughed despite himself. "Come in." They ate at his kitchen table, working their way through sandwiches that were definitely too expensive for a Tuesday lunch. Vanessa kept glancing at him and then looking away, like she was building up to something difficult. "I voided the contract," Ethan said finally, pulling the folded document from his pocket. "Last night, figured we should probably start fresh." Vanessa took the paper, read what he'd written across the top, and set it down carefully. "I was going to do the same thing today. I have the dissolution paperwork in my car." "So we're on the same page." "We're on the same page." She took a breath. "But that brings up a bigger question. If we're not doing this because of a contract, why are we doing it?" "Because we want to." "Do we?" Vanessa's eyes were searching. "Or are we just caught up in the momentum of survival? We've spent months fighting my father, managing crises, performing for cameras. Now that the immediate threat is over, maybe we should figure out if there's actually something real here or if we've just trauma bonded." Ethan set down his sandwich. "You think this is just trauma bonding?" "I don't know. Do you?" He thought about the questions seriously, about the past 4 months, about every moment they'd shared, the fake dinners and real conversations, the staged photo ops and genuine laughter, the fear and the relief, and the slow, surprising realization that he looked forward to seeing her. "No," he said. "I don't think it's just trauma bonding. I think trauma brought us together, but what's kept us together is something else. Something I haven't felt in a long time." "What's that?" "Hope. Partnership. The feeling that someone actually sees me and doesn't want me to be anything other than what I am." He paused. "Is that how you feel?" Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. "Yes, but that terrifies me. Because I don't know how to do this, Ethan. I don't know how to be in a relationship without controlling every variable. And I can't control you. I can't control how this ends. I can't even control how I feel about you." Maybe that's the point. Maybe the best things in life are the ones you can't control. That's a nice thought, but I've spent my entire life building systems and structures specifically so I don't have to rely on things I can't control. And how's that working out for you? Vanessa laughed bitterly. "Not great, apparently. I'm 36 years old. I just won a corporate war against my own father, and I'm sitting in a kitchen having an existential crisis about whether my marriage is real." "Well, when you put it like that, it does sound kind of ridiculous." "It is ridiculous." She looked at him. "But I don't want to walk away from it. That's the part that scares me. I should want to walk away. It would be cleaner, simpler. But I don't." Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. "Then don't. It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because we're from completely different worlds, Ethan. I live in a penthouse downtown. You live in a rental house with peeling paint and a furnace that sounds like it's dying. I spend my weekends at charity galas. You spend yours at hardware stores. Our lives don't actually fit together. They fit well enough right now. Right now we're in crisis mode. But what about when things are normal? What about when you realize that my world is exhausting and shallow and full of people like my father? What about when I realize that your world is— She stopped. Is what? Too small, too ordinary, too poor? I wasn't going to say that. But you were thinking it. Vanessa pulled her hand back. That's not fair, isn't it? You just listed all the ways our lives don't fit together, and every single one was about class, about money, about the fact that I'm not from your world and never will be. Ethan stood up. I thought you were different, Vanessa. I thought you saw past all that. I do see past it, but that doesn't mean the differences don't exist. No, it doesn't. But it also doesn't mean they have to matter. Of course they matter. They matter to society. They matter to my family. They matter to who? Because they don't matter to me. They don't matter to Lily. So who exactly are we worried about? Vanessa was quiet. I think, Ethan said slowly, you're looking for reasons to run because you're scared. And I get it. I'm scared too. But I'm not running. I'm standing here telling you that I want to try, really try. Not because of a contract or a crisis or because we need each other to survive, just because I want to see where this goes. Vanessa stood up and walked to the window. She stared out at his small backyard, at the stick bridge Lily had built, at the chain-link fence that needed replacing. My father called me this morning, she said finally. He said I'd destroyed our family, that I'd chosen a stranger over my own blood, that I'd regret it for the rest of my life. Do you think he's right? Part of me does. Part of me thinks I should have just accepted his control, taken the easy path, avoided all this mess. She turned to face him. But then I remember what it felt like to live under his thumb, to have every decision questioned, every choice second-guessed, to be constantly performing for approval I was never going to receive. And I realized I'd rather have this mess than that prison. That's not about me, though. That's about your father. Mom, no, it's about freedom. You showed me what it looks like to live without constantly performing. You showed me that it's possible to just be honest and messy and real, and I don't want to go back to the alternative. Ethan walked over to her. Then don't. But what if we try this for real and it doesn't work? What if 6 months from now we realize we made a mistake? What happens to Lily then? She's already attached to you. She already sees you as part of our family. If we break up, she loses you too. She doesn't lose me. Even if things don't work out between us romantically, I'm still her stepmother legally. We figure out how to coexist. We do what's best for her. Adults do that all the time. Do they? Because my parents stayed married for 20 years longer than they should have, and it didn't exactly turn out well for anyone. Then we don't make their mistakes. We communicate. We're honest. We put Lily first. Ethan took her hands. Look, I can't promise this is going to work. I can't promise we won't fight or struggle or discover we're incompatible in some fundamental way, but I can promise I'll try. I can promise I'll show up. And I can promise I won't run just because things get hard. Vanessa's eyes were bright. I'm not good at this. At vulnerability. At needing people. Neither am I. But maybe we can be bad at it together. She laughed, and it came out watery. That's the worst romantic pitch I've ever heard. I'm a welder, not a poet. I know. That's one of the things I like about you. She squeezed his hands. Okay, let's try. For real. No contracts, no timelines, no predetermined endings. Just two people figuring it out as they go. Just two people figuring it out, Ethan agreed. They stood in his kitchen, holding hands, and Ethan felt something shift, like they'd been standing on opposite sides of a line and had finally crossed it together. So what now? Vanessa asked. Now we tell Lily. Together. And then we figure out what the next step looks like. Lily took the news with the kind of pragmatic acceptance that suggested she'd seen this coming from miles away. So you're staying married? She asked, looking between Ethan and Vanessa. Yeah, Ethan said. We're staying married. For real this time? Not because of money? For real this time. Lily nodded. Good. I like Vanessa. She's smart, and she doesn't treat me like a baby. Thanks, Lily, Vanessa said, smiling. But if you hurt my dad, I'm going to be really mad at you. That's fair. And if you get divorced, you still have to come to my birthday party. Because you promised you would, and I don't let people break promises. I'll be at your birthday party. I promise. Okay. Lily went back to her homework, apparently satisfied that the adults had finally gotten their act together. Ethan looked at Vanessa. That went well. She's terrifying. I know, it's great. Over the next few weeks, they built something that looked less like a crisis response and more like an actual life. Vanessa started spending more nights at Ethan's house, though she kept her apartment downtown. Ethan started attending company events with her, not as a prop, but as her actual partner. Lily started calling Vanessa by her first name instead of Dad's wife, which somehow felt more intimate. They fought sometimes. About small things mostly. Vanessa's need to control everything, Ethan's tendency to avoid difficult conversations, whose turn it was to handle Lily's carpool. But they talked through it, messily and imperfectly, and came out the other side still standing. 2 months after the board vote, Ethan's shop finally started showing real profit. The publicity from the news coverage had brought in new clients, and Vanessa had quietly connected him with contractors who needed quality metalwork. He hired his first employee, a kid fresh out of trade school who reminded Ethan of himself at 22. 3 months after the vote, Vanessa restructured the company's voting rights, diluting Richard's control to the point where he could no longer threaten her position. Richard showed up to one more Sunday dinner, said nothing throughout the meal, and then stopped coming altogether. Vanessa told Ethan she felt relieved and heartbroken in equal measure. 4 months after the vote, Lily's latest checkup came back clean. No signs of cancer, full remission. Ethan cried in the hospital parking lot while Vanessa held him and Lily chattered about getting ice cream to celebrate. 6 months after the vote, Vanessa sat Ethan down at her apartment and said, "I think we should end our marriage." Ethan felt his stomach drop. What? Not end our relationship, end our marriage. The legal one. The one we entered into under false pretenses. She took his hand. "I want to divorce you, Ethan, and then I want to marry you again, for real this time, with actual vows and actual commitment and no lies or contracts or ulterior motives." He stared at her. "You want to divorce me so we can get married again? I know it sounds insane, but think about it. Right now, we're married because of a lie, because of desperation and strategy and fear. Every time someone asks how we met, we have to maintain the fiction. Every anniversary, we'll be celebrating a date that represents deception. I don't want that. I want something clean, something honest, something we chose freely." Ethan thought about it, about the contract he'd voided, about the lie they'd been maintaining, about the way their marriage certificate represented everything they were trying to move past. "Okay," he said. "Let's do it." "Really? Really? But on one condition." "What's that?" "You let me propose properly. No business arrangements, no negotiations. Just me asking and you answering." Vanessa smiled. "Deal." The divorce was quiet and amicable, processed through lawyers who must have thought they were the strangest couple in the city. Married for less than a year, no assets to divide, no custody to negotiate, just a mutual agreement to end a legal arrangement that had outlived its purpose. When the papers were finalized, Ethan took Lily to pick out a ring. Not an expensive one. His budget didn't stretch to diamonds the size of Vanessa's usual jewelry, but something simple and beautiful and real. Lily helped him choose, insisting on one with small stones around the band because it looks like stars. He proposed 3 weeks later on a Saturday morning in his backyard. No fancy dinner, no dramatic gesture. Just the two of them and Lily, standing by the stick bridge that had somehow survived 8 months of weather and childhood engineering. "Vanessa Hart," Ethan said, holding the ring. "Will you marry me? For real this time. No contracts, no conditions, no crisis. Just us. Just this. Just a future we build together." Vanessa looked at the ring. At Ethan. At Lily, who was practically vibrating with excitement. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." Lily cheered. Ethan slipped the ring on Vanessa's finger, and Vanessa kissed him in his backyard, in the middle of an ordinary Saturday, with no cameras or witnesses or audience except a 7-year-old girl who was already planning the wedding in her head. They got married 4 months later, in a small ceremony at the courthouse with Lily as their witness and Mrs. Chen as their photographer. Vanessa wore a simple dress. Ethan wore a suit he'd bought himself. Lily wore her favorite blue dress with flowers and carried a bouquet she'd assembled from dandelions she'd picked that morning. The ceremony lasted 10 minutes. The vows were short and honest and included a promise to always make pancakes on Saturdays. When the judge pronounced them married, Lily shouted, "Finally!" so loudly that everyone in the courthouse heard. They went to Morrison's diner afterward, the three of them, and ate pancakes while Lily explained to the waitress that her dad and stepmom had gotten married twice because the first time didn't count. "Why didn't it count?" the waitress asked, amused. "Because they were lying," Lily said matter-of-factly. "But they're not lying anymore. Now they actually love each other." The waitress looked at Ethan and Vanessa with raised eyebrows. Ethan shrugged. "She's not wrong." Later that afternoon, they had a small reception at Vanessa's apartment. Nothing fancy, just 30 people who actually mattered. Mrs. Chen brought homemade dumplings. David Chen, the lawyer who'd helped them survive the CPS investigation, brought champagne. Margaret Voss from the board brought flowers and a card that said, "I knew you two were real." Richard Hart was not invited. Vanessa had sent him an announcement, a small gesture of closure, but she didn't expect him to respond. He didn't. What he did do, 3 weeks after the wedding, was send Vanessa a letter. Just one page, handwritten, delivered to her office. Ethan found Vanessa reading it in her apartment that evening, tears streaming down her face. "What does it say?" he asked. She handed it to him. The handwriting was precise, controlled, every letter perfectly formed. "Vanessa," it read. "I was wrong. Not about everything, but about the things that matter. I spent your entire life trying to shape you into what I thought you should be, and in doing so, I failed to see who you actually are. You are stronger, smarter, and more capable than I ever gave you credit for. Your husband is not the man I would have chosen for you, but watching the way he stands beside you, the way he challenges you and supports you and refuses to be intimidated by you, I realize he is exactly the man you chose for yourself. And perhaps that is what matters. I don't know if I will ever be able to fully accept your choices, but I'm trying to understand them. That is all I can offer right now. I hope someday it will be enough. Your father, Richard." Ethan read it twice. "He's apologizing. In his way, yes." Vanessa wiped her eyes. "It's not a full apology. It's not unconditional acceptance, but it's more than I ever thought I'd get from him." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to write him back. I'm going to thank him for trying, and I'm going to tell him that if he ever wants to meet his step-granddaughter, he's welcome to join us for pancakes on Saturday." "You think he'll come?" "Probably not, but the offer will be there, and maybe someday he'll surprise me." Ethan pulled her into his arms. "You're a better person than I am." "No, I'm just someone who's learning that holding grudges takes more energy than letting go. You taught me that." "I didn't teach you anything." "Yes, you did. You taught me that it's possible to be honest even when it's hard, to choose vulnerability even when it's scary, to build something real even when it starts with lies." She looked up at him. "You taught me that the most dangerous lie I ever told led me to the truest love I've ever known." Ethan kissed her forehead. "That's very poetic." "I'm learning from Lily. She's very wise." From the living room, Lily called out, "Are you guys being gross again? Because I can hear you." "We're not being gross," Vanessa called back. "You're totally being gross. Mrs. Chen says married people are always gross." Ethan laughed. "We should probably go rescue Mrs. Chen from whatever Lily's telling her about us." They walked into the living room to find Lily showing Mrs. Chen her wedding drawings, elaborate scenes of the courthouse ceremony, complete with dandelion bouquets and a judge who looked suspiciously like a superhero. "She's very talented," Mrs. Chen said diplomatically. "She gets it from her mother," Ethan said without thinking. Everyone went quiet. Lily looked at Vanessa. "You're my mother now, right?" Lily asked. "Legally?" Vanessa crouched down to Lily's level. "Legally, yes, but you don't have to call me that if you don't want to. You can keep calling me Vanessa." "What if I want to call you Mom?" Vanessa's eyes widened. "Then you can call me Mom." "Okay, Mom." Lily tested the word. "It feels weird." "It'll feel less weird with practice." "Okay, Mom," Lily said again, grinning. "Can you make me more pancakes?" "It's 7 at night." "Pancakes don't have a time, Mom. That's the whole point of pancakes." Vanessa looked at Ethan, who shrugged. She's not wrong. They made pancakes at 7 at night, in Vanessa's expensive kitchen, with Lily directing operations like a tiny executive chef. Mrs. Chen stayed for dinner, telling stories about Ethan as a child that made Lily laugh until she couldn't breathe. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Ethan realized this was what happiness actually felt like. Not perfection, not the absence of problems, just the presence of people who chose to show up for each other day after day in small and imperfect ways. A year after the second wedding, Vanessa sold her downtown apartment and moved into Ethan's house. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. They renovated together, adding a home office for Vanessa, upgrading the ancient furnace, building a workshop in the garage where Ethan could take on smaller projects without going to the shop. Lily's room got a fresh coat of paint and a new bookshelf to hold her growing library. The stick bridge in the backyard was eventually replaced by a treehouse that Ethan built with Vanessa's dubious assistance and Lily's constant supervision. Ethan's business continued to grow. He hired 2 more employees and started bidding on larger projects. Vanessa connected him with architects and developers, not as favors but as genuine business referrals, and Ethan's reputation for quality work spread. Vanessa restructured Hart Industries' focus, moving away from pure profit maximization towards sustainable development and community investment. It was slower growth, more intentional, and it drove some of the old guard board members crazy. But the company thrived, and more importantly, Vanessa thrived. 2 years after the second wedding, Richard Hart showed up for Saturday pancakes. He didn't call ahead. He just appeared on the doorstep at 9 in the morning, holding a box of pastries from an expensive bakery and looking uncomfortable in casual clothes. "I thought," he said when Vanessa opened the door, "I might take you up on that offer, if it still stands." Vanessa stared at him, then she stepped aside. "Come in." Richard sat at their kitchen table, the same table where Vanessa and Ethan had first tried to figure out how to make their fake marriage look real, and he met Lily for the first time as her actual grandfather. Lily, to her credit, was polite and curious, and asked him approximately 800 questions about what it was like to be old and rich. Richard answered every single one with more patience than Ethan had ever seen from him. They didn't become a close family overnight. Richard still had trouble accepting that Vanessa's choices were valid, and Vanessa still had trouble trusting that her father wouldn't try to control her. But they tried. They showed up. They had pancakes on Saturdays, and slowly, painfully, they rebuilt something that looked less like a war and more like a family. 3 years after the second wedding, Lily turned 11. She was healthy, thriving, and completely convinced she was going to be an engineer when she grew up. She'd moved past stick bridges to actual structural models, and Vanessa had started bringing her to construction sites to see real engineering in action. Ethan's hair had more gray in it. Vanessa had laugh lines that hadn't been there when they'd met. They fought sometimes about stupid things, whose turn it was to do dishes, whether Lily could get a dog, how to balance work and family. But they also laughed more than Ethan had thought possible, and they built a life that was messy and imperfect and entirely theirs. On their 3rd anniversary of the second wedding, Ethan and Vanessa sat on their back porch while Lily worked on homework inside. The treehouse Ethan had built was visible through the trees, lights strung around it because Lily had insisted it needed to look magical. "Do you ever think about how this started?" Vanessa asked. "All the time," Ethan admitted. "You walked into my shop in the middle of a storm and offered me $50,000 to pretend to be your husband. I thought you were insane." "I was insane. I was desperate and terrified and willing to do anything to escape my father's control." She leaned against him. "But I got lucky. I got you. We both got lucky. Do you think we would have found each other if it hadn't been for the crisis? If I hadn't needed someone to play a role, and you hadn't needed money?" Ethan thought about it. "Honestly? Probably not. We live in different worlds, we move in different circles. There's no natural way we would have crossed paths." "That's depressing. Maybe. Or maybe it's proof that sometimes the worst situations lead to the best outcomes. Sometimes you have to walk through fire to find something worth keeping." Vanessa was quiet for a moment. "I spent years believing that love was a luxury I couldn't afford, that relationships were just another form of negotiation, that the only person I could trust was myself." "What changed?" "You did. You showed me that trust isn't about perfection or certainty. It's about choosing to show up even when you're scared. choosing honesty even when it costs you, choosing someone else's well-being alongside your own. That sounds like something you'd say in a TED Talk. I'm being serious. I know, but it's making me uncomfortable. Vanessa laughed. 3 years married and you still can't handle emotional vulnerability. I'm a work in progress. Good. Me too. She took his hand. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. You never gave me a reason to give up. You gave me reasons to fight harder. From inside, Lily called out, "Are you guys being gross again?" "Yes," Vanessa called back. "Deal with it. I'm telling Mrs. Chen." "Mrs. Chen already knows," Ethan smiled. "We should probably go inside. It's getting cold." "In a minute." Vanessa stayed where she was, looking out at the backyard, at the treehouse and the garden they'd planted together and the life they'd built from lies and desperation and stubborn hope. "Do you think Lily understands how lucky we are?" she asked quietly. "I think Lily understands that we love each other and we love her. The rest is just details." Those are some pretty significant details. Maybe, but kids don't care about how things started. They care about how things are now. And right now, she's got 2 parents who show up for her, a grandfather who's trying, and a future that's wide open. That's not luck. That's what we built. Vanessa squeezed his hand. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just didn't notice because you were too busy being terrified." Fair point. They sat in comfortable silence, and Ethan thought about the man he'd been 3 years ago. Desperate, exhausted, willing to lie for money because he didn't see any other option. And he thought about the woman Vanessa had been, trapped in her father's shadow, convinced that control was the only path to safety. Neither of them had been looking for love. Neither of them had believed it was possible. But sometimes the things you don't plan for are exactly what you need. Sometimes the lies you tell to survive become the foundation for truth you never expected. Sometimes the most dangerous gamble of your life leads you to the safest place you've ever known. 3 years ago, Ethan Mercer had agreed to a 6-hour arrangement with a woman he didn't know, for money he desperately needed, in a world that felt impossibly far from his own. Today, he was sitting on his back porch with his wife, in the house they shared, building a life that was real and messy and entirely their own. It wasn't the ending he'd imagined when he'd first said yes to Vanessa Hart's impossible offer. It was better. Because the best stories aren't the ones where everything goes according to plan. They're the ones where you lose the plan entirely and find something true instead. Where you start with lies and end with love. Where you choose each other not because you have to, but because you want to. Where you discover that the most dangerous thing you ever did was exactly what you needed to do all along. Ethan and Vanessa went inside where Lily was waiting with homework questions and elaborate plans for the weekend. Richard called during dinner to ask if he could join them for Lily's upcoming school play. Mrs. Chen stopped by with soup and stayed to tell stories that made everyone laugh. And somewhere in the middle of the ordinary chaos of a Tuesday evening, Ethan realized he'd stopped counting down the days until something changed. Because this messy, imperfect, completely real life was exactly where he wanted to be. No contracts, no conditions, no predetermined endings, just love. Built slowly and carefully from the broken pieces of 2 people who'd been brave enough to risk everything for a chance at something true. And that, Ethan thought, as he watched Vanessa help Lily with math problems while simultaneously fielding a work call, was more than enough. It was everything.